across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning. Welcome to the show. This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 3 minutes past 10 on Monday morning. And, I mean, you'd think there was already a by-election contest, wouldn't you, in Makerfield in Manchester? I mean, you'd think that was already happening and it was a done and dusted deal. But, by the way, an MP's resigned. No actual writ has been moved yet for that by-election. Andy Burnham, you might find it hard to believe, has not actually been selected as the Labour candidate. We don't know who the other candidates are likely to be. And it's already being derailed. Who by? Well, Andy Burnham's allies are accusing Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, ex-Health Secretary, who resigned on last Thursday, approximately 30 seconds after I went off air. I will hold that against you, Mr. Streeting, I will. Accused him of trying to derail the Greater Manchester Mayor's campaign, basically, who are we kidding, to be Prime Minister. He's not desperate to be the MP for Makerfield. He's desperate to be Prime Minister, but he needs to come back into the Parliament to do that. But why do they accuse him of that? Well, because Wes Streeting decided to really helpfully, in his sort of announcement that he would run for any leadership contest as and when it is called, by calling for Britain to rejoin the EU. Well, of course, that meant that Andy Burnham was asked about his expressed preference that we rejoin the EU in his lifetime as he campaigns ahead of that by-election. Meanwhile, Angela Rayner, we're told, was sounded out by Number 10 to take over as Health Secretary, but even she turned that job down. God help us. And we're told by David Lammy today, out and about doing the media broadcast, that the Prime Minister does not have a timetable for his departure, even though the rest of us have definitely got a timetable for him to go. Plus, we're going to be talking about those hate marches, or the one hate march on Saturday, the far-right hate march that the Prime Minister decried on Friday, saying how awful it was there was going to be this march by the far-right. But was the Unite the Kingdom rally the real hate march on Saturday, or was it the Nakba march, the pro-Palestinian march, that was actually the problem? Well, we'll be talking to the police about the total of 43 arrests at those rival demonstrations in a £4.5 million police operation. Yet your and my money went on that. All of that, plenty more besides coming up. Delighted to say Sal Grover, if you've not been keeping abreast of this, we've had our Supreme Court case here about what is a woman, where our Supreme Court very sensibly ruled that women are biological sex women. That's the only kind of women, and if you have a women-only space, it's based on that. Well, the Australian courts at the end of last week, the federal court, basically ruled the other way. In the Tickle v Giggle case, I'll explain it all later if you're not up to speed on it, basically ruled, and this is an ongoing case going on 4 years now, they basically ruled that, a woman can enter a woman-only space, but also a man who claims he's a woman can also enter a woman-only space, because a trans woman under Australian law is a woman, full stop. So biological sex doesn't come into it. So basically, a woman is any human being at all who says they're a woman. Is that what we think a woman is? We'll be talking to Sal Grover live from Australia later in the show about that madness going on down under. You thought our country was mad. They're even crazier in Australia. Brings back memories of lockdown, doesn't it? Anyway, delighted to say joining me on the show is Benedict Spence, Conservative commentator. Morning to you.
Good morning.
Happy Monday morning. I must say, if you do miss anything of today's show, you can, of course, go to our YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show, hit subscribe, so you never have to miss a thing. Benedict, got to start with this by-election. That hasn't even been called yet. That's what I love. It's not even been called yet. But we know it's going to happen on the 18th of June, in just a few weeks' time. And there's no doubt at all the push is on for Andy Burnham to get the Labour nomination. I mean, you've got to look at the laughs. He doesn't get it. If the local people went, no, actually, no. It's next to his old constituency when he was an MP. It's Manchester. You know, he seems like a good seat. And then this spanner is thrown into the works, which is that 2/3 of people who voted in the last council elections voted they'd voted for Leave back in 2016. Every ward that went up for election at the local council elections went to Reform. And suddenly, Wes Streeting, I'm desperately keen for there to be a wider, broader selection of candidates, he decides to start talking about a push to rejoin the EU, which is great if you want to win the Labour leadership. Great in Cambridge and Oxford and some of your leafy suburbs of London or Islington membership. That's great. Not so good in, effectively, a red wall, heartland, leave voting, what was a Labour seat.
I mean, two things to say about this. One, it's very funny that these places still exist, because I was reliably informed by every Ramona that everybody now wants to rejoin the European Union, and everybody believes that it was a huge mistake. Apparently everywhere except this one specific place that Andy Burnham is now going to stand. How unfortunate if that is indeed the case, that he picked the only place in the UK that still thinks Brexit
Which would be
was a
fine
good
if it wasn't mentioned, but as Reform are making it very clear that they are going to throw kitchen sink at this, and they're absolutely going to bigger Brexit. Now, what do you make of the people? I mean, Dan Hodges, a big friend of the station's on the show all the time. He's been a fantastic commentator on all the Labour leadership shenanigans. But he says, look, no one cares about Brexit. These voters will not care about Brexit. So I think he's quite wrong on that.
I think they. I tell you what, they wouldn't care about Brexit if nobody brought it up.
Thank you.
But they've brought it up, and they can't help themselves but bring it up. And I have to be clear on this. I think Wes Streeting has been very clever. I think he's played a blinder
I'm
here.
quite impressed, actually.
Well, to be fair,
I quite like that level of cleverness in number 10.
To be fair, we always knew that of a pretty bad bunch, Wes Streeting was probably one of the ones closer to the top in terms of actual political wisdom and smarts, and actually that little bit of needle that you might need to. That's
he's saner than the rest of them.
He is saner, and he's also ambitious, which is partly why so many members of the party don't like him. But the thing is with this, though, he is also hamstringing himself, because in a bid to knock out what is clearly a stronger rival in Andy Burnham, and this could well go a long way to doing that, he is making a rod for his own back in a couple of years' time, because this will be brought up on the doorstep by Reform 100%. If he becomes Prime Minister. So it's that sort of short term, it could be very profitable, but not even long term, medium term.
But events, dear boy, might take over.
Sure.
But this is the crucial thing. It's like, okay, no, we're not relitigating the 2016 Brexit referendum, but the point is, there's still, I mean, it's what's so funny is Brexiteers don't go on about Brexit. It's the Ramoners, not Remainers, not people who voted Remain and accepted the outcome. It's the people like Keir Starmer and others and all that lot who all happily campaigned for a second referendum, who undermined our ability to get a decent referendum. The chaos of Brexit and the division. There was only chaos and a division because, Cameron decided to resign. He might have done a decent deal, actually. And because we basically had half the country's politicians, if not more, fighting against the outcome of a democratic vote, not respecting it and trying to undermine our position with the EU. That's why we got a worse deal than we would have got. Theresa May still have an issue with you to this day. But either way, the issue about this, Brexit wasn't so much about Brexit as, and people say, oh, it was a protest vote. No, it wasn't a protest vote. It was the British public. And by the way, 40% of people working in the city voted for Brexit. Can we all stop pretending this is some sort of, people didn't know what they were doing. People absolutely knew what they were doing. Thank you very much. Yes. But people were just saying, we are fed up with with the situation we've got at the moment. We're fed up of not having democratic control over our own government because the government keeps saying, oh, it's not our fault, we can't do anything. They're fed up with the uncontrolled mass immigration from the EU. The solution to that from Boris Johnson was uncontrolled mass immigration from Pakistan, India and Nigeria. Yeah, that was absolutely what everyone was looking for in the Boris wave. But it was basically, you're not listening to us, you're not looking after our needs, you're globalist, you don't get it, listen to us. And so they all played lip service to it, to the British public. And then they've basically gone out of their way to renege. And the British people aren't having it. And when we have had this big debate all weekend of, if we lose another Prime Minister, it'll be the 7th Prime Minister in 6 years or 10 years, whatever it is. And it's like, in 10 years because we're ungovernable. No, the British people keep saying no to politicians who get into office and then do the exact opposite of what they said they would do. The British public have had enough. We're not going to give you a ride out until the next 5 years. We're going to say straight away, not good enough, try again.
Yes, and this is whenever anybody blames Brexit for anything, you have to remember it was a vote against the trajectory that people saw the country going on. And frankly, Brexit has been vindicated, if nothing else, for the fact that politicians have continued down that route anyway. In fact, in some areas, they've gone harder. The fact that we still have a Prime Minister just about, in office, who's talking about more realignment with Europe.
Yeah.
And people are sat there going, but you're still not getting it. And, that's a different thing to the immigration, because, as you say, they simply replaced, one set with another that a lot of people would say, well, this is not an improvement. If anything, it's
even
worse.
less
but it's
culturally
the fact
aligned.
that the great vision of our politicians is not to go, OK, let's see what we can do on our own 2 feet. It's to just go, well, we can't do anything on our own 2 feet. Let's just try and make life as easy as possible for us, the political class, at the expense of everybody else. And I think that that's really a very depressing summation of the state of affairs right now. The brightest and the best, self-appointed, believe that the best thing to do is to take all the power out of their own hands and give it to somebody else.
They genuinely think that the Germans and the Dutch and the French can run us better than we can run ourselves. And that tells you everything. It is quite extraordinary, isn't it? Again, I'm wondering how much that is going to scupper Andy Burnham on the doorsteps, because it's a whole class that ain't listening. Of course, you've also got the issue of big issues, and Maggie Oliver's spoken about this already, about the grooming gang inquiry failures, in terms of just bringing review after review and then basically just doing nothing about dozens and dozens and dozens of men in the Manchester area who were clearly guilty of mass rape and child abuse and doing nothing. He was in charge as Health Secretary of the Mid Staffordshire Hospital scandal. There's a lot of talk about him being this amazing mayor because of Manchester's economic growth, and actually there's quite a lot of evidence this is just like a weird statistical error, and there really is no evidence of this. That said, Manchester nightlife, I'm reliably informed by a teenage daughter, is absolutely stonkingly good because she keeps going there on a night out. But I want to hear from you. Andy Burnham's allies accuse Wes Streeting of sabotaging the Manchester Mayor's campaign to be PM by making the Makerfield by-election about Brexit. What is your reaction? I just want to hear your reaction to all of that. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost £1, standard network rate message. Also, I'd love to hear your thoughts on David Lammy, the Deputy Prime Minister, out and about today, talking very slowly. Somewhere between David Lammy and my speeds is about the right human speed, isn't it, for speech? But Lammy said that Keir Starmer has no timetable to leave and he's going to fight on. We've got Lisa Nandy, the culture secretary, out and about at the weekend. She, like others, has been campaigning for Andy Burnham in Makerfield. But the weird thing about this is you're basically campaigning for a Labour victory in a by-election, and that Labour victory will 99.9% ensure that the Prime Minister will be ousted. Do you think that the Prime Minister is going to lay out a timetable? Because there's this whole thing started this weekend that he doesn't want to be seen to be being pushed out, and that by Andy Burnham, as he would go on his own terms. But does he lay out a timetable to leave? And then Andy Burnham doesn't win this by-election, which is entirely possible. There's only a majority of 5,000, and that's 24, and the polls have scuppered since then. There's no way in the world he chose this seat to prove he could fight reform. This was the only seat anyone would give up, because this absolute horror of a Labour MP who gave up his seat, Josh Simons. Absolutely repulsive man. The man who... we'll get into that another day. But in terms of what he tried to do to basically dig up dirt on journalists who were, doing legitimate stories about something that he was involved in. Absolutely scurrilous creatures, got no business in politics at all. But this is the only seat he could get, right?
Yes.
But so if Burnham doesn't get it, and then there's a choice in the ballot, and Keir Starmer automatically goes on the ballot in this Labour leadership contest between between Keir Starmer, Wes Streeting, I don't know,
and maybe somebody else.
Ed Miliband, Angela Rayner, who knows what. If Andy Burnham doesn't get it, you can guarantee, I think, Rayner and or Miliband will go on it. Does Keir Starmer stand as the better option, or does he basically say, I'm going now, and then and then there's who knows?
I think we all know that he's not going to see it out to the next general election unless he calls it early. But I do think, actually, suddenly, out of nowhere, right as he's basically been put out of his misery, something has awoken in Keir Starmer. The political, inclination to try and survive, to try and actually fight his corner, has come out of nowhere. As I say, basically when it's too late. But I do think, actually, that that's a viable outcome.
He might be the least worst option on the day.
He will present himself as the least worst option. And actually, many members of the country, because they don't like Wes Streeting, the party don't like him, rather, they might then look at that and go, do you know what? Actually, yes. Because they might also look at Miliband or Rayner and say, well, we might like them, but honestly, is the public going to back them? Almost certainly not.
As I wrote in The Sun on Friday, my top choice for the Labour, not I think it will happen, but my top choice would be Angela Rayner, and Ed Miliband as a Chancellor, because and if people go, what? You? And I went, no,
speed up
as I wrote in the article, don't send for the men in white coats, hear me out.
Yes.
Because I genuinely think whoever is, whether it's Keir Starmer dragging on, whether it's Andy Burnham, whether it's any of that lot, I mean, certainly Ed Miliband, and Angela Rayner, you are looking at economic disaster, more social discord, failure to tackle any of the real issues, the economy, immigration, the just lack of productivity, just the whole thing. They are not going to tackle anything, any of these people. And I say, in which case, go for the worst. Go for the worst one, and let's just bring it on, and let's hit rock bottom. We're like heroin addicts. We have been addicted to being, basically spend. We're spending a load of money. Oh, let's spend more on the NHS. Let's spend more on this. Oh, we're going to have a big, plan to spend more on defence at some point. Great, do that. But we haven't got the money. We're living on the never never. We've been living on the never never for decades. At some point, it's going to have to end. Let's just bring it to an end in one big bang. We're going to hit rock bottom. We're going to hit the gutter with Angela Rayner, and then we climb back out. That's my thesis. I think we're better off just getting it over and done with, rather than dragging it out another 5 years.
What would you rather do? Invade the Japanese mainland and spend months and it's very painful, or just drop the bomb on it and just bring on the disaster?
Drop the bomb. Drop the bomb. Let's also talk about events on Saturday. Now, I don't think either of us are particularly marchy people. I've been on a few marches in my time. I went on a genuinely an anti-Nazi rally in Germany when I lived in Germany back in the early 90s.
Oh, really good timing.
They were really good timing. No, exactly. No, they were genuinely Nazis.
Did you miss the memo?
I did, Apparently the war was over. No one told me. I've gone on a number of marches, counter anti-Semitism marches, and I've been on an anti-lockdown march. But largely, I'm not someone who thinks, oh, can I go on a march this weekend? Largely, also having torn cartilage in my knee, not actually allowed to do any marching right now anyway. So I've got to say, I wouldn't have gone on either of the marches this weekend. The Nakba march on Saturday, pro-Palestinian march, marking the expulsion of Palestinians, 700,000 Palestinian people from Arabs, they weren't called Palestinians then, but in 1948 from Israel. No one seems to remember that 900,000, so more Jews were expelled from all the other Arab states at the same time. I mean, it's almost like they don't matter, except they weren't given refugee status. They were basically given citizenship in Israel and have continued to live a wonderful, prosperous, full life. I'm just saying maybe there are different choices being made by different states on this. But anyway, the Nakba March up against the far-right hate march, as the Prime Minister called it in advance in one of his videos where he clutched his hands and seemed to care about the country, which was organised by Tommy Robinson, a.k.a. Stephen Yaxley-Lennon, the Unite the Kingdom March. Now, neither march actually had a great turnout. £4.5 million was spent on 4,000 police officers. By the way, these are ordinary men and women. I've got friends who end up having to do this, who are coppers, who are trying to plan a life, see their kids, and they're basically being told, no, sorry, you're going to spend the weekend in London dealing with this bunch of lunatics. Now, the key thing is, only one march was decried as a hate march, and that was the far right Tommy Robinson march. Now, I hold no candle for Tommy Robinson. I think Tommy Robinson is a bad person. I think he's a grifter. I've got no time for him. I would not go on that rally simply because it was organised by him. But I know lots of people who went on that rally who have also got very little time for Tommy Robinson, but wanted to go and show their solidarity as patriots and fly the England flag, fly the Union Jack, and have a day out with the family. And there was an extraordinary, I've seen loads of the footage, spoken to lots of people who was out there at that rally, really good atmosphere. A little bit of trouble at the edges, few wrong uns, as there always are at any event. I mean, frankly, you can have a school picnic and there'll be a couple of wrong uns. The Nakba rally, though, I mean, more people were at the Unite the Kingdom, we think, but again, both, it's in the tens of thousands. No one had 500,000 at any rally, whatever the nonsense people claim. Remember, again and again, we're seeing police officers lying in a route where people are shouting, globalise the Intifada, which is a call for the mass killing of Jews worldwide. We've been seeing that. We saw the attempt in Golders Green. We've seen what happened at the Heaton Park synagogue last year. Absolute spouting and spewing horrible hatred, lies about genocide. That won't stop. From the river to the sea, there was some blatantly, openly anti-Semitic, not even pretending, blatantly anti-Semitic placards and things. Yeah. And yet, a couple of dozen arrests in either rally. Which was the real hate march?
I mean, honestly, we all know which of the two is the more virulent and the more disgusting and actually prompts the more danger to people. I mean, I'm opposed to the idea of the Unite the Kingdom march because marching is a little too fast for me, and frankly there are lots of parts of the kingdom I have no interest in uniting and would quite happily send elsewhere. But ultimately I prefer that to the importing of ethnic blood feuds from around the world that have nothing to do with us, ultimately, only lead to more blood feuds and more violence, and if nothing else, inconvenience people in London every single week. I'm simply not interested in tolerating this, and it's not simply a Palestinian thing. If it's anything, any other kind of
I don't think it's even remotely about Palestine.
Of course it's not about Palestine for a lot of these people. It's simply about hatred of Jews. But still, I'm not entirely sure why it is we continue to tolerate every single week our capital city and the people who work hard in our capital city, because there are a lot of people
who work in shops who need to make a living.
Every single day they are inconvenienced, and Jewish people are inconvenienced because they can't necessarily attend synagogue or send their children to school
this one went past the synagogue.
The simple tolerating of these foreign conflicts that have nothing to do with us and only spread division and hate. We shouldn't be tolerating
But freedom of
these things.
speech.
We don't have freedom of speech in this country. And this is my issue here, because that was demonstrated by the fact that the Prime Minister was able to say what he wanted about the other march, because actually if those people on that march said certain things, they would get arrested.
100%.
So if we're not going to have freedom of speech in this country, let's be clear, either we're going to have freedom of speech, which they don't want to give us, or we're not. In which case, you better clamp down on everybody else just as much.
But I would rather...
There needs to be the consistency.
You are perfectly... I've got no problem. If you want to have a march about a cause that you pretend you care about because you think you can burnish your credentials and wear your silly keffiyeh and think that you're a good person, that's fine. I've got no issue with that. However, if the organisers of that march, a lot of them, links to Hamas, small point worth making. I mean, I think that's a bit of a giveaway. Hamas, you know the terrorists, those ones, the ones who did the stuff that a load of you still deny happened on October the 7th. If those people want to go on that march, that's fine, except that when you are surrounded by people who are shouting anti-Semitic slogans and carrying those banners, at that point, you as a good person should walk away and refuse to be associated. Organise your own properly peaceful, anti-Semitic march, and B, the organisers should be told, if you cannot control this, and it's been made very clear, the organisers of march are responsible for the people who are on that march. You've got your stewards and everything. You need to be responsible for what the placards and what people are shouting and what people are doing. If you cannot be responsible for those people, if the police say basically we can't go in and arrest people because there'll be basically a small-scale riot, so we have to go in, we do facial recognition, we get them later. No, if you can't go in and arrest people who are committing crimes during that march is not a peaceful march, it's a dangerous march and therefore should be banned. I'm sorry, but if the police came, if I was on a march and there was someone shouting something racist, I would absolutely support the police if they came and arrested that person. Yeah. I really would. So if you're trying to stop that and you're causing a riot and the police are genuinely fearful of handling people on that march, that tells you all you need to know.
Yeah, and frankly, I mean, this is the thing, it is the double standard, because if it was on the so-called far right, Unite the Kingdom march, actually there wouldn't be lots of police sitting around going, oh, it's all right, we'll get them later. They would go in heavy-handed, and that's the difference here.
And they do. They
frequently do, often preemptively is the funny thing. They do it because they've spotted somebody else.
Different standard.
And this is the thing, I think ultimately these marches also shouldn't be happening in terms of, the Nakba one, because if there were actual moves to arrest, properly punish people who did break the law on these things, there simply wouldn't be that many people going on these marches, because they've been going on for years now. People have been going on these marches and breaking the law for years.
Yeah, exactly.
And yet they keep rocking up because they're not in prison. How odd. I thought that they were all being arrested after the fact. Apparently not.
No, absolutely not. Just finally, very briefly, Eurovision Song Contest on Saturday night. I had a good friend's daughter, Antigone, was competing for Cyprus, born and bred in Britain, but very strong Cypriot links. I did a great job. Didn't do as well as we would have hoped. The Bulgarian entry, Dara won. I mean,
good for her.
Well, again, I don't. Because we're British, we shouldn't really care. This is the thing that Europeans care about, because they think this is actually musical culture. They don't understand music. If you've ever been to a bar in any country in Europe, you will know this, because the only good music they play is British and American music. It's very, very... I'm sorry. Let's just... They're great. Even the French. Cheese and wine, mountains, lovely, all of that. But you can't do music. Stop. stop doing music. It's not for you. But we had a disastrous result. We came last. 1 point, which is from the Ukrainians. Thanks, Ukraine. Can I just say, though, they were being nice, because our entry by Look Mum No Computer, his song Ein, zwei, drei. I mean, the fact that his chorus was in German, I mean, good God. It was so bad. I mean, it was so bad, it deserved minus points. Juries should be allowed to give minus points in this thing. And Israel, of course, came second. Again, actually, I was going to say, not a very good song. But, yeah, I mean, I've got to be honest with you, I split my votes between Cyprus and Israel. I did.
I mean, Cyprus is Britain, or at least parts of it are. I mean, yeah, I know that causes a lot of contention, but our criteria is British territory, so that's perfectly fine. So we did get some points there. I think, actually, it's fine for Britain to get almost no points, 1 or 2 points.
No, I want 0. 0 point is the only respectable outcome.
The only way to do this is as the gentleman amateur who has no talent whatsoever. That's actually what we should be doing this for, and that's exactly what we did. So we absolutely did the right thing. But, of course, the funny thing is, Bulgaria obviously wins. I barely even know where Bulgaria is. But Israel comes second. And lots of people are getting very angry about Israel coming second. It's saying, oh, it's rigged, it's this and the other.
Well, no, it's the Jews controlling everything.
Well, this is, if nothing else, it's because actually there isn't a way for bigots to vote against a country. You can only vote for countries.
Yes.
It's actually quite a positive thing. If you like a country, you can vote for it. If you don't, well, there is no downvote.
And again, and they did, as always, much better on the public vote.
The average person is not a raging anti-Semite. I know that this is really upsetting for a lot of left-wing activists. It's very upsetting, but still, that's how things work.
Exactly.
Most people are civilised.
There we are. We're always, as always, over time on our chat. We're going to take a quick break. I want to hear from you, particularly about the Makerfield by-election. Basically, Bernie Burnham's allies have accused Wes Streeting of sabotaging the Manchester mayor as he campaigns, basically not just to be that MP, but also, let's face it, to be Prime Minister by making the by-election about Brexit. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. We'll get your calls up next. This is Talk.
Welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
Rachel Reeves, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCown.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Suits. That's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beard, and I feel.
Raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of this desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very good afternoon. Good afternoon, good morning. 10:30 is the time. This is Talk the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's get straight to your calls. Nick is on the phone in London. Nick, what do you want to say about this by-election?
Oh, hello, Julia. Morning to you. There's so much about that, but the one thing that exasperates me more than anything else is people banging on about the European Union and the vote to leave. We've done that. Decision made, and those who've come to power since the Brexit vote have all done it on the say-so that they'll uphold the result. So for now to go on about we're going to have another referendum, or we're going to rejoin, or we're going to align more closely, we're going to be rule takers and not rule makers. No.
Here. We've had 3 general elections since, and all of them have been based on We will not.
Exactly so. Brexit was about one thing above all else. Never mind £350 million on fishing rights.
But by the way, the NHS gets more than that extra a week now.
I know, but it wasn't about that. It was about essentially who runs Great Britain.
Yep.
Who runs the United Kingdom? Is it Westminster or is it Strasbourg? And we said it's Westminster.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, Nick, that's it. I couldn't agree with you more. Thank you very much indeed. Daniel's in Epsom. Daniel, what do you want to say?
Oh, hi, Julie. Hi, Benedict.
Hey.
Yeah, I mean, we all know why Wes Streeting's saying what he's saying.
It's quite clever.
It's quite clever. He's been, obviously... And I always think, how can you be talking about the European Union at all when it wasn't in your manifesto?
Yeah.
People would have voted for you if they knew that you were going to then be underhanded and clandestine about closer links.
Well, that's what Starmer's doing right now, though. This work experience scheme for under 30s. Oh, I wonder who's going to do that.
Yeah, but it feels very underhanded. It feels very like, doing things by the back door. And when it wasn't in your manifesto, it feels dirty, to be honest with you, Julia. I don't like it. It's underhanded. It feels wrong. And I'm really worried about this upcoming seat that's going up, because what's worrying me now is Restore running in that local election. Restore running in that ward, and then you've got the Tories will as well, and then you have Reform running in there as well. For me, the worry is this is a microcosm of the next general election. And I think everyone who's sane out there has seen how bad this Labour government has been. I mean, it's been the worst government in living memory, right? The Green offering is even worse.
Okay. So why are you worried about the outcome of the election, the by-election?
Well, because I think it might be a microcosm of what happens in the general election. You've got all these parties on the right, going up for I think it's time now. It's high time they got together. Kenny, Nigel,
not going to happen.
Rupert.
It's not going to happen. I mean, I know Rupert did well in was it Sunderland? But was it Sunderland? No, not. I can't remember where it was where Rupert really did well. But the odds are this is a Reform Labour battle, full stop, in this by-election. Honestly, Daniel, wishful thinking at this stage of the game. But again, effectively letting Labour in if they're all split. I think there's a lot of calls for Kemi Badenoch to withdraw the Tory candidate to give Reform a better chance of defeating Burnham. But, I don't think that's going to happen either. In fact, we'll talk about that with my next guest, former Labour Special Advisor Paul Richards. He's up next. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 10:35 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's go straight to my next guest to talk about, what is going on with Labour politics. Paul Richards is a former Labour Special Advisor. Very good morning to you, Paul.
Hello there, good morning.
Thank you for joining us. I mean, the front page headlines today, I think, are very unexpected, I think, from what we were expecting from, say, Friday. They're all of them about Brexit, and a lot of them are about Wes Streeting's EU stance, basically deliberately giving a speech talking about how he wants to rejoin the EU eventually, not talking about doing it before this election, and how basically this is a bid to derail Andy Burnham, because Andy Burnham has also said the same stuff, and now Brexit, funnily enough, has reared its head once again to be an issue in this by-election. Do you think Wes Streeting did that deliberately?
I actually don't. I was there in the room as he was delivering the speech. It was a very long, detailed essay on the future of the country, setting out his prospectus. Of course, in the speech itself, he didn't say, I'm going to stand to be the leader. He did that very dramatically and I suspect choreographed with a journalist asking it at the Q&A afterwards. And that was the first question up, and then he said it. And then the reference to Brexit came later. Now, you know, the two schools of thought. One is he said it because it's what he's always said, and it's, you know, what most Labour Party members believe. Or B, it was a very cleverly calibrated way of Labour doing badly in the by-election. But I don't believe that latter at all.
You don't. It just happens to have that added benefit. I mean, I'm completely innocent on this. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, it's a very big issue within the Labour Party still, because the only people still banging on about Brexit are the Remoaners, not Remainers, the Remoaners who don't accept the result. And again, there'll be a lot of anger about this, but it is fascinating that Andy Burnham is standing in a by-election in a seat which, yes, it has a majority of 5,000 from the 24 election for the outgoing MP, Josh Lamers, but there's no doubt at all this would not have been his first choice seat, even though it's in the Manchester area and he had a seat nearby. I mean, he's got lots of reasons why it's a good seat, other than the fact that in the local elections just a couple of weeks ago, bear in mind, just a couple of weeks ago, every ward that came up for election voted for reform, and back in 2016, 2/3 of people in this whole seat voted for Brexit. I mean, there's a very good chance, isn't there, that Andy Burnham doesn't win this seat?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. It's a really tough fight ahead. And, you know, you can't take these things for granted. The only thing I would say is, though, you can't predict the future of a by-election based on what happened in the past, because people are no longer tribally loyal to one party. They shop around. They will listen to the arguments, look at who the candidates are. We don't know that Andy's going to be the candidate yet. Probably will, but, you know, we don't know for sure. So, you know, in all those circumstances, people behave in by-elections entirely different to how they've behaved even 2 weeks ago in a local election, and certainly in a general 2 years ago. So, you know, you have to be a bit careful around that. But it's not a shoo-in at all. He did represent the seat next door, Lee, of course, for all those years. So it is his home turf, and I believe his kids went to school there, so he does know the area.
Oh, yes, it's totally legitimate. And again, there's no doubt at all, he's a very popular figure. I like him personally. I think he's a really good communicator. I thought he played a blinder during lockdown, representing Manchester and indeed other northern cities that were facing a very, very tough time. I think he's a very good political operator. I'm not quite sure what he stands for on anything, because he was known as Flip-Flop Andy when he stood in the last two Labour leadership contests. But the reality of things is he's not actually officially the Labour candidate yet, although there was an attempt, wasn't there, by Lucy Powell, one of his big allies, of course, deputy leader of the party, to stitch up the NEC that makes the decision before Number 10 could try and change it. Because obviously the ideal for Keir Starmer was that Andy Burnham can't stand. But at the end of the day, we could see a situation where Andy Burnham leaves mayoralty of Manchester, which he did say he would be in. He was in that job for 5 years, less than 2 years, and he's leaving that job. He could be out of that job. He could not win the mayoralty, and then we're in a situation where we've got a prime minister who is absolutely, I say, crawling wounded, not even walking wounded, and then a Labour leadership contest where we're stuck between Starmer, Wes Streeting, who the party don't like, and probably someone of the likes of Angela Rayner or Ed Miliband running on the left. And who knows, maybe Al Khan's as defence minister, who's, you know, a very impressive man in his army career, but untried and untested politically. I mean, we could end up in more of a mess than we're in right now, as could your party.
Well, the two criteria I'm going to apply to any of the candidates is, can you carry the party? Obviously, you've got to be selected by the party. And then can you carry the country? And those two things have to be true of whoever the candidate is, which is why we need a proper big open debate with all the candidates putting forward their ideas. I didn't want to be here. As you know, you've asked me this question before many times. I think it's an absolute nonsense that we're having a contest at all. But if we are going to have a contest, and it seems likely now, then it has to be open and with all the candidates on the field. I mean, Andy's gamble here is quite an interesting sort of, it becomes self-fulfilling. If he can beat reform in a Brexit-y kind of seat, you know, white working class seat, therefore he's got a very strong case to say, well, I can do this on the national stage, because as you rightly say, the next battle will be Labour versus Reform at the general election in 2 or 3 years' time. And if he can't do that, then he shouldn't be the Prime Minister anyway. Yeah. So it's a little bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy that if he does it, succeeds, he has made an argument and won it about who should come next as Prime Minister.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, that's the thing. If he does win it, all credit to him that he will have bucked the trend, and that will stop being an issue. There has been some talk about, the Tories like Jacob Rees-Mogg has called for Kemi Badenoch to basically stand aside for reform in Makerfield to give a clear run. But of course, that would be an argument a lot of people are making at the next general election, that those two parties need to give each other have an unofficial pact, where they kind of you stand a candidate, but not really, no leafleting, no campaigning, you paper candidate, if that, so that you can clear the way and you don't split the vote. And one of our callers just pointed out that actually you could end up with a situation where you could get this situation where you've got the left v the right, and Labour could end up winning because the right vote is split.
Well, there's a couple of things on that. I mean, that does happen now, doesn't it? Where people put up a candidate and everyone goes off to campaign somewhere else, so the party machines work behind their target seats. And that's one of the reasons Labour did so very well at the last general, because they were absolutely ruthless in their targeting. As I know, as a candidate who came fourth in the general election, 2 seats over from a seat that we won, so that's how targeting works. But I mean, what's called a coupon election, where candidates actually stand down against each other, I'm not sure about. I always favour the electorate making that choice and having a full spread of candidates. If there are parties, they should stand candidates. And I think maybe Jacob and his sister as well, funnily enough, has said the same thing this morning, that Kemi shouldn't stand a candidate. But wouldn't that be an astonishing thing, that the opposition party, the Conservative Party in this country, just gives up in a by-election?
Which is why no one thinks it's actually going to happen. That's certainly not the way we've been seeing Kemi Badenoch behaving lately, indeed. The thing about there's this view, isn't there, that sort of Andy Burnham is this sort of great white hope. He's a shining knight, and is in the suit of armour, and he's going to ride into Downing Street. Everything's going to be fine. Of course, not only does he still face the same in tray of economic woes, he's got the same Labour backbenchers that won't let him do any of the things that actually are necessary. And also, he is more left-wing, as such as we know his political views. He was a Blairite when I first met him, but he's actually, in terms of policies, more left-wing than Keir Starmer. Now, that's not going to sort out the country in terms of, let's renationalise everything. Yeah, great. I mean, those policies are actually quite popular. Will they make a blind bit of difference to people's bills, to people's cost of living, to the economy? No, not at all.
I mean, the challenge to all the candidates now is to set out a better prospectus than the one we've got now, because it has to be about the politics of this. I mean, the personalities the shine will come off whoever the Prime Minister is elected in a few months' time. Within, I wouldn't even give it that long, and their flaws and their foibles and all of their background and history will all come out, and we'll be back where we started. So, I mean, for the Labour Party, this has to be a policy-based debate about what the best thing for the country is.
Except without a general election, I've got, the Constitution, there's no requirement with a new Prime Minister to have a general election, even though, of course, that's what Labour called for repeatedly when the Tories changed their leaders. So, hoist by their own petard. But if they're standing on the same manifesto pledge, such that there was anything of any meat content in that manifesto, and most of the things that Keir Starmer has done have either been things that the Tories will put in train, or things that were not in the Labour manifesto and no one knew about and he's had to U-turn on. But if whoever is the next leader basically follows on with the same manifesto, then I don't think they do. But if they want to start a whole new policy agenda, then they should get a mandate from the British people, shouldn't they?
Well, that loops back to your point about Brexit. The Labour manifesto was very clear on Brexit and on rejoining the EU, which is we're not going to do it. So it doesn't really matter what the candidate's personal views are in that regard, because the manifesto locks us in. I would be against the idea of a general election, though, because I think, if we start doing that, it's about the Constitution, and we have a.
Well, then why did Labour call for the Tories to hold a general election?
Well, I think that was the daft thing you say in opposition, which you rue in government, isn't it? Typical example of that. But actually, the Labour Party was elected. MPs were elected for a 4 or 5 year term. That's the way our British Constitution works, and therefore I don't want to see the chopping and the changing.
Well, then in that case, Andy Burnham shouldn't be allowed to stand down from being Manchester Mayor. But there we are. Just finally, there's all the criticisms of Andy Burnham. Again, he's Mr. Lovely eyelashes. He likes his football. He goes for a jog. Cameras just happened to be there yesterday. But there's also big criticism, and Maggie Oliver, regular on the show, has talked about his failures on the grooming gang inquiries, various reviews carried out, and the review of the reviews, which basically discovered that no actual action was taken. And basically, this is when which is when Andy Burnham was very much in charge and could have actually, done something to actually ensure there were prosecutions of, basically serial rapists and child abusers. He was health secretary during the Mid-Staffs hospital scandal, when lack of action there. Question marks about, has he been this amazing mayor of Manchester? I said my teenage daughter has vouched for their great nightlife in Manchester, but actually a lot of the stuff about the amazing economic boom, 3% growth, whatever that Manchester's had, that actually this is a bit of a statistical error and is not actually accurate.
Well, it's a good example of what we were just talking about, isn't it? Which is that you can't just do this based on personalities. They're all going to have to stand on their records. I mean, Andy's team would, of course, refute absolutely everything.
They'll deny it. They won't refute it. Refute means they prove that it was not true.
They will push back very, very hard indeed, and that be part of the case that he makes. As will Wes or Angela or Al Kens or any of the other candidates that may well come forward. But if I think your point about the mythology of the king over the water, the white knight riding in and all that, absolutely right. Does not fix the problem. If you think you've got a problem, then swapping the leader, as the Conservatives showed us in very large measure, it doesn't fix it. No. So it's about policy, this debate, and it has to be done in a calm way. I mean, at the moment, I have to say they're behaving like, Chimp's Tea Party. The Labour MPs.
He said
it really is very unedifying.
Well, yeah, next 4 weeks are going to be fun, aren't they? Meanwhile, who's governing the country? A lot of us might ask. 10:48 is time. Great to talk to you. Paul Richards, former Labour Special Advisor Paul Richards. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 10:50 is the time. Let's talk about that hate march on Saturday. Which one was it, though? The Prime Minister was very big on how there was a far-right hate march that was dividing our people. Seemed to me that the only actual hate march we saw at the weekend was the one that claimed to be about the pro-Palestinians. Certainly when it comes to the arrests, it was pretty much even Stevens. But actually, were there far more crimes committed on the Nakba march by the pro-Palestinian crowd? It's just the police don't bother arresting people. Let's talk about this with Chris Phillips. He's the former head of the National Counter-terrorism Security Office. Good morning to you, Chris.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. I have to say, a lot of us, I think, were pretty shocked by the Prime Minister trying to absolutely playing politics, appealing to his basest base, I thought, with his this hand-wringing video about the far right dividing us in the hate march. I'm sure you, like me, have no time for Tommy Robinson, and Tommy, really not interested. Don't tweet about me, mate. Don't. I'm not interested. But vast majority of people on that Unite the Kingdom rally were ordinary, hard-working, patriotic Brits who just wanted to show support for their country and call for change. I mean, was it a far right rally as far as you could tell?
No, definitely not. And I thought Keir Starmer's words were disgusting, actually. And I think what would he be trying to lose a by-election by any chance? Because what he's doing is turning normal people with absolute concerns about their communities and what's going on in their country against him and his party. And I don't think he's doing Andy Burnham any favours at all by this.
Yeah, indeed. And it was absolutely fascinating. I mean, obviously we only had 43 arrests we were told about on the day, and then we had it broken down, and it was fairly even. And you're going to get wrong-uns at any event, but the point is the policing of the Tommy Robinson rallies, and we saw it last time round as well. I mean, it's £4.5 million of taxpayers' money went on keeping these two marches apart. But the policing of that is far more heavy-handed and far more, proactive than it is at all these various pro-Palestinian rallies where day in, day out, week in, week out, we see blatantly, openly anti-Semitic hate chanting and nothing is done.
Yeah, I think we need to be careful and get things in perspective from the policing perspective, because I've policed many demonstrations much, much bigger than this, more than 4,000 officers used. It's just the norm in London over the years. I mean, it may not have been more recently. This was blown up out of all proportion to be some major, major, major event.
Yeah.
I think the only thing that was different on this one was the use of facial recognition, which was unusual, and I thought ridiculous that they only used it on one side and not the other. That was asking for trouble. Why would you do that? I just don't understand the mentality of that. If you're going to do it, use it right across the piece. It's we're supposed to police everyone. But you're right. The demonstrations that we've seen over the last couple of years have been really bad, really problematical, and the police have been a bit hamstrung, and often because of the CPS advice as to what they could deal with and how they could deal with it.
But also a deliberate refusal to understand what things like globalise the Intifada means, which is kill all Jews worldwide. It's what it means.
Yeah, exactly.
It's what it means.
And the trouble is, you can get away with that perhaps once.
Yeah.
Because people are stupid. Believe it or not, they are stupid. But you can get away with that for a little while. But once it becomes clear what those meanings are, then there should have been really firm action taken.
But we're told that the reason why the police don't take action on the day is because they can't, start a full-scale riot when there are, there are that many people. But by definition, the organisers responsible for everyone on that march, are they not? And if they continue to have marches where you're having people with blatantly, openly anti-Semitic placards and chanting, organised chanting, with megaphones and you don't, as a steward, do anything about it, and the police can't go in because there are so many and they fear disorder, by definition, that's not a peaceful march. If anyone saying you need to stop doing that will cause a problem, or we go in to arrest people committing a blatant crime, if that would cause a full-scale riot, that ain't a peaceful march, in which case it's not a legal march.
You're right, but actually you can do something about people that are doing bad things in a group. We've been doing it since the 1980s.
Yeah.
You have arrest teams that go in. I mean, I could give you the way that we were doing it then, and I doubt that it's any different now. It's simple stuff that we've been doing since the 1980s to arrest people.
Yeah. And it's quite heavy-handed. It looks very heavy-handed, but it's basically helmets and everything. But that's the only way of making sure.
You've got to go in to take people out, and it's that sends a message. And you may well have some problems on that day, but actually you've got to enforce the law, and we seem to have gone to a policing system which is more about being scared to enforce the law.
Yeah. Well, but only for one group. I mean, Samara Gill, our reporter here, she was at the rallies and she went to both, and she got exclusive footage of chanters with a big banner chanting very openly in the street, broad daylight, with police around them, shoot him in the neck like Charlie Kirk, calling for Tommy Robinson to be hung like Mussolini. Now, you can like Tommy Robinson, you can not like Tommy Robinson, whatever your thoughts are, calling for him to be murdered is surely a crime that should be punished.
Yeah, and of course, we've got to be aware of police see what they see. And I would be surprised if there weren't police officers in those marches picking people out that were actually misbehaving. So, you can't speak for what police saw as against what an individual saw. But it has been so disappointing. And I speak to a lot of ex-police officers over the years that have been over the years that have retired and things. Everyone is very disappointed to the way the marches have been dealt with over the last.
What would you do if you were in charge? We're told by the Home Secretary, we can't do anything unless the Met Police Chief says, please can you put a banning order in place? And the Met Chief says we haven't reached the threshold. And I care about freedom of speech, the right to protest, and there's an element where, well, if they stop that march, then they'll stop a march that I would care about. I mean, what would you do if you were in charge?
Well, you do have to have banning orders for certain groups that have been shown that they can't control their people. But prosecutions are really good. But it always worries me about prosecutions. Really, when you prosecute someone, you want someone to really suffer the consequences. And that doesn't happen in the courts. But actually taking people to court and taking all their money and their houses off them does work. We don't need to send necessarily people to prison. There are ways and means of courts dishing out punishments which actually work.
That's interesting. I mean, they should have to pay for some of the extra costs of the policing. I mean,
policing, yeah, exactly.
The rest of us are paying for that, especially on FA Cup final day as well. I mean, quite ridiculous. I mean, again, if you compare this to things like Notting Hill Carnival, OK, that's over 3 days and involves lots more people. But in terms of the number of arrests, the stabbings and all of that, actually, these protests are nothing compared to that. Chris Phillips, thank you. Always good to talk to you. Former head of the National Counter-terrorism Security Office. Benedict Spence still with me, joining me in the studio. There's no doubt at all that when people say we feel like we've got two-tier policing, I mean, it's not a feeling. It is a reality, isn't it?
Well, yeah, the feeling stems from somewhere, and that's what people can see in front of their eyes. I mean, the tricky thing, of course, is that, we don't actually want to live in a heavy-handed society, but it's the fact that there is evidence of it heavy-handed.
You say we don't, you and I don't. An awful lot of people would ban everything.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Of course, there are an awful lot of people who would ban absolutely everything, and, they sadly, they tend to get their hands on the sort of the fun things first, rather than anything else. It never seems to be the actual dangers to the public that get banned. It's just things like smoking in a pub. That's the important thing. I'm sorry. Have you ever smelled it? You smell the average pub. It smells a lot better when they had cigarettes.
They smell a lot better now. I used to work as a barmaid in pubs. I love that smoking ban. I'm sorry. As does the vast majority of the public.
Here, you're one of those people that will ban things.
Because I don't want to have someone putting smoke in my face when I'm working, when I choose not to smoke.
Outrageous.
Smoke outside.
Let's get Chris Snowden on the show now. Call him up. Let's have this conversation.
I think even he accepts it. I may be wrong there. No, but that's the thing. It's just, there is a fine line. I mean, there is a fine line. But it's very important we should err on the side of free speech at all times. But free speech does not include the right to deliberately talk about, like, killing people of a particular faith. Well, simply, that is not part of the deal.
We don't have free speech in this country, and people would just like to see it applied evenly and equally. Either we're going to have it or we're not, and if we're not, it needs to be for people that are spreading the same things that other people are, and if that means, clamping down on people who are saying racist things, so be it, but it needs to be done on an equal basis. Otherwise, we need free speech. Which one is it going to be?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very much more in favour of the, First Amendment-style American levels of free speech. However, but again, even that has limitations. I think it's perfectly possible to go on a march every single day of the year and march for apparently the girls and babies you think have been genocided if they haven't. But you don't need at any point to be anti-Semitic, but yet they do. We're going to talk about loads more, including the Makerfield by-election. Stay tuned.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning to you. This is Talk, the home of common sense, for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer, fast approaching 3 minutes past 11 o'clock. And whether you're listening on DAB Plus Radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, thank you so much for your company. Lots more to talk about. If you do miss anything from the show, especially the last hour, we had a rip-roaring first hour, I like to think, you can go to my YouTube page, The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe. You never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking more about that by-election in Makerfield in Manchester, and whether or not, actually, Andy Burnham's bid to... He's not even the candidate yet. He's not even officially the Labour candidate yet. They haven't officially said there is a by-election yet. There is a by-election. It's on the 18th of June. It's just not official yet. But already being derailed by his good mate, Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, as was, who resigned last week. He's decided, really helpfully, to start talking about rejoining the EU at some point. Not in this Parliament, admittedly, but wanting to rejoin the EU. Obviously raises the spectre of what Andy Burnham thinks. Yeah, he wants to rejoin the EU. He thinks it was a catastrophic decision for us to Brexit, which won't necessarily go down too well on the doorsteps of Makerfield, where 2/3 of voters in 2016 voted for Brexit, and where just a couple of weeks ago in the local elections in the wards that went up for a vote, they all went to Reform. So he's already got a tough battle. So we'll be talking about that. Also, we're talking more about the Unite the Kingdom march at the weekend, and the former BBC News boss who's claimed that she was driven out of her top job by trans activist bullying. We'll be talking to the other former BBC journalist who interviewed her and got that exclusive, Rob Burley, a little bit later in this hour. Don't forget, also going to be talking about the latest madness when it comes to trans issues. By the way, that is going to be an issue in this Labour election, because we've now got a new Health Secretary in James Murray, who some of you may remember was on my show quite some time ago explaining to me how trans women were women. Of course, you know, Wes Streeting. I'm in two minds on where he stands on a lot of this stuff, but like Andy Burnham, who's most likely, if he does win this by-election, to be the next Labour leader, again, you know, he absolutely thinks that men who claim they're women are women. We have a real issue with reality in this party. We really do, and indeed among the Lib Dems and the Greens as well. But also a big reality check in Australia, where we're going to be talking a little bit later in the show to Sal Grover. She is basically the woman who's pushed back on the madness of Australian laws that basically allow a man, blatantly, openly a man, to pretend that he's a woman to get onto a women-only messaging site, which she had set up. Tickle v Giggle, rather wonderfully, is the name of the court case. She's been here in the studio before on a trip to Britain, but she, at the end of last week, lost her case again in the Australian Federal Court, the Federal Court that rules, quite bizarrely, that legally speaking, a man is a woman, which means that a woman isn't anything at all. So a man who says he's a woman is a woman. I mean, absolute madness. Thank God for our Supreme Court decision last year. But the fact that we need courts who are obviously utterly captured by this madness to make these rulings, well, she's going to keep on fighting. We'll talk to her about that up next, because, frankly, our Antipodean cousins are as insane as the Canadians. The Irish are just as bad. What the hell has happened? Americans, of course, started all this madness. I would have, a few years ago, counted on the Australians to be more sensible on this and taken none of this nonsense for your Sheilas, but you have been. We'll talk about that. Right now, delighted to say, joining me on the show today is Benedict Spence, Conservative commentator. Morning.
Good morning.
Again to you.
You need to remember there's a reason we sent those people there. Like, everybody forgets this, but, you know, we didn't want them here in the first place.
Please send your complaints to Benedict Spence, care of Talk TV. Now, the question I'm putting to the audience, Andy Burnham's allies have accused Wes Streeting of sabotaging the Manchester Mayor's campaign to be PM by making the Makerfield by-election that he needs to win to get back into Parliament to be able to challenge the Prime Minister all about Brexit. What's your reaction to that? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK in your message to 87222. Get in touch on X at Talk TV. Calls to charge the national rate, and text cost £1, standard network rate message. Andy Burnham, first of all, Andy Burnham, Benedict Spence, sorry, do you think, I'd love to see you running a lady leadership contest, that would be a fun vote? I
see
would
me
join.
Running anywhere would be a hilarious thing to say, let alone in an Everton shirt.
Yeah. Yeah, the general view is you need more new pair of shorts.
This is the least likely scenario that you've ever come up with.
If you've not seen this footage of Andy Burnham going for a jog yesterday morning, try not to see it. That's my best bet. Try not to see it. Although he did write quite a funny little post about it. The guy, he's a good communicator. He laughs at himself. Honestly, he is a very skilled political operator. He really is. Well, certainly has learned to be since he twice failed to become Labour leader. Do you think, first of all, that when Wes Streeting decided to talk about Brexit and his support for rejoining the EU at some point, that actually when he did that, it was a deliberate bid to make that an issue? It helps him among the Labour leadership voters who are going to be Labour Party activists who are almost entirely pro-EU and think that Brexit was the worst thing that ever happened to the entire history of the world. And also had the little added bonus that it scuppered Andy Burnham in a seat that is Reform voting and Brexit voting.
Yeah, it helps Streeting in the short term massively because it means that this will be brought up on the doorstep a lot. And it means that Reform have something really to run with because actually they'll have Burnham's words to hand, to use against him whilst they're on the campaign trail. So it makes it a lot more likely that Burnham might trip at this by-election if he, does indeed stand. So that would be, make
Will
perfect
voters
sense.
care about this?
Yeah, they will. They will because actually I think what they really do care about is a sense of betrayal. Even though Brexit is not currently the agenda at the top of everybody's minds, I think there's nothing more emblematic actually than basically where a lot of anger has come with politicians in this country, it's the sense of being lied to and betrayed. So having been given,
the sense of,
that's
again,
my point.
the reality.
And so this is something that therefore is being put on. This is the thing. Burnham, because he's not been an MP, he's not been in government, is able to distance himself from so many things that Starmer has got wrong. But this is something that people are able to pin pretty firmly on him, and it just happens to be that big overarching thing that has defined politics in this country for the last decade, 15 years, whatever it might be. That has been the agenda, that has been the issue. Do you trust your politicians to actually listen to what you say? And as you say, he's done a fantastic job of reinventing himself as this caring man who listens, who gets... And to be fair, there is some substance behind it, not as much as people would like to, portray, but there is a lot of substance there. But still... That's such a hot topic issue, and if you just bring it up, the idea of Brexit betrayal, that really sits in the craw.
And the main thing is, it's about dissing and absolutely dissing the voters, and the way I've still never been prouder of our country than voting for Brexit, other than in 2019 when there was an option to get Brexit done. The number of people I know who voted Remain but still held their noses and voted for Boris Johnson, in fact, Nigel Farage's crew, basically because that was the only way of getting Brexit done. But literally, we will not put up with the shenanigans that have gone on. What happened? I remember, every single day, being down at College Green, for months on end, 2019, with these absurd parliamentary votes and the absolute stitch up. And Keir Starmer, massively part of it. Again, I've always said he's undemocratic. I think he's unfit to be Prime Minister on that alone. But again, most Labour politicians were in on this. They were desperately trying to stop it. And the fact that they weren't, being front and centre of those campaigns, they were still not standing against it. The one person I do have massive respect for on this issue is Lisa Nandy, and she was out on the media airwaves yesterday. She's been campaigning for Burnham in Manchester, and yet at the same time saying, she supports the Prime Minister serving in his cabinet as Culture Secretary. But she was the one who went, this is madness, absolute madness to bring up Brexit. And she's the person who, in her seat, voted for Brexit, and she was very, very clear that she respected that vote, and she stood by that. All credit to her. Again, you should get credit for what should be a basic democratic requirement.
Yes.
But I do give her credit for it because we don't seem to live in that sort of political age. But there's no doubt at all Reform are going to throw the kitchen sink at this. Now, Reform have had some of their own woes, and we'll talk to Richard Tice a little bit later in the show, the deputy leader, over his tax affairs. Had that £5 million donation from a crypto billionaire to Nigel Farage. He didn't declare. There's a parliamentary investigation into that. There's now some talk about whether he should have paid tax on it, on the interest he's earned on it at least. And so, he's facing a lot of difficulties, and there's a lot of sort of well, hold on a minute, what's going on there? But realistically, this should be Reform's seat to win after those local elections. But there is now talk that, given that Burnham wants to get in to basically become Labour leader and rescue the Labour Party, is it in the interests of the Tories? Rupert Lowe's Restore. I said earlier Sunderland. I knew it wasn't Sunderland. In my head, Great Yarmouth, of course, where
it's on the same side
is.
of the country.
But he did, he did very, very well. Lots of his candidates winning in Great Yarmouth. But I'm sorry, this is a Reform voting seat. Should the other major parties and Restore, not major, should they, well, that's major, who are we talking about? We're talking about the Tories. Should the Tories stand aside or not?
I mean...
They
won't. They won't. This is something that right-wing parties are going to have to come to terms with, and that is that the closer we get to a general election, more and more left-wing activists and parties and voters will start to vote tactically. And the problem, I think, for Reform and the Tories are that it's an existential issue between the two of them. The Greens, Labour and the Lib Dems can coexist. Reform and the Tories long-term cannot. One will have to kill the other. They might continue to exist, but as a very small thing, but it'll have to be one or the other.
And certainly after any general election, one of them is going to disappear.
Well, I'm not sure actually after this general election. I think if Reform were to win the next general election or be, the largest party, I still think there's a future for the Tories. I think
there's absolutely a coalition.
And there's also a thing to be said, and this is, I don't hold a candle for Restore, but I do understand, where Reform has come from is as a response to the Tories not being kept accountable, not being honest. So there is an argument actually for Restore existing for that basis alone. You look at Italy with Matteo Salvini, who was the sudden right-wing insurgent, was not as good as he thought. Out of nowhere comes another right-wing party, and it keeps them honest, and that's how you get Giorgia Meloni. So you can understand where that idea would come from. The problem is Restore obviously are nowhere near being a major party, but they could take enough votes off Reform to keep them out, especially if the Tories... Well, that's the thing. Even if I think the Tories stand aside, because people will look at that and they'll go, all right, so I feel emboldened enough, because Reform will probably be more likely to win if the Tories step aside, I can actually vote for Restore. And that could be a problem. All it takes is a few hundred votes in a seat like that.
Is it in the interests of people who care about this country? Now, whatever your political views are, whichever party you vote for, for there to be an Andy Burnham victory, and Burnham, undoubtedly, if he does win in this seat, he then returns, he is the king of the North, he returns to Westminster. There probably won't even be a leadership contest, Labour Party, although, people like Wes Street and others will push for it. But, realistically, the left goes in behind him. He would win it hands down. Do you even need to go to a proper parliamentary, a party member vote? If you do, you could do it very quickly. I don't know. Is there basically a coronation? At which point, you could argue, for all Labour's faults, Burnham will be a better political operator, communicator than Keir Starmer. Or actually, is it in the interest, if you care about this country, if you're stuck with Labour for the next few years, having another Labour leader in who's probably to the left of Keir Starmer is your worst case scenario?
So this is my position, and I apologise if anybody thinks it's a bit morose, but this is where I stand on this.
Here we go, on Monday morning.
Doesn't matter who the Labour leader is. The party structurally cannot fix the problems that the country faces, and it also has no desire to. No leader can come in and force the membership or the backbenchers to accept something that they don't want. There's no attitude for it. So it actually doesn't matter. In which case, actually, you might be saying you might as well speed run the disaster now, because it's going to happen either way, because the party won't change the structural issues that are affecting the country. There is going to have to be a change of government at some point for that to happen. Now, let's be clear. There is nothing that says that it will be a Reform government, and even if it is, there's nothing to say that a Reform government will be able to fix those structural issues either. But my point is, it actually doesn't matter who the Labour leader is. All that it can do is hasten that disaster sooner or later, but it's going to happen either way. That's my view. And,
I think that's a very accurate analysis. At the end of the day, do you think the Prime Minister is going to be willing to walk away?
No, he's worked his whole career to get to this point, and I do think it would be more dignified if he... Listen, the ideal world if he resigned, or indeed called a general election, I think there'd be a lot more dignity, and I think it would do a lot, actually, to restore faith in him if he actually said, well, very clearly I don't have the mandate I thought, so I'm going to put it back to the people.
He is,
but he won't do that.
No, exactly.
Because he's undemocratic, as you say.
No, but also, that would be an insane thing to point out. By the way, the Labour Makerfield MP who's standing aside for Andy Burnham, Josh Simons, has just formally resigned, and tomorrow we are expecting that there will actually be the announcement of the by-election tomorrow.
You say that it's actually would be an insane thing to do because he would lose his majority. Sure, but that's going to happen to the party anyway. Crucially, right now, Reform do not have enough and they would have to go into some sort of coalition, probably, with people they don't want to go into coalition with, and there's no guarantee, actually, that the Tories would agree to a coalition in the event of Reform being the largest party but not having a majority. But imagine the two of them having to try to take chunks out of each other, while Reform aren't ready, and the Tories are still trying to get back to their feet.
When the Tories and Reform go on about wanting a general election now, they really... I mean, the Green Party would want one now, because they are going to gradually disintegrate over the next few years, and they're a busted flush already, as you know, that Zach Polanski, no doubt at all, is. I mean, he's being exposed. But it is absolutely fascinating. No Labour Prime Minister is going to go, going to go to the King, and I'm going to absolutely annihilate my party and almost undoubtedly lose power. Even if it's to go to a coalition, no one's going to do that. The key thing is, Keir Starmer wants to make his face, but can he do it at this point? I mean, people are always quite nice about people once they leave office, aren't they? I mean, I'm not. I mean, maybe when they die, but even then.
Is there somebody you are nice about after they've left office? There's got to be one somewhere. It doesn't have to be British. Anybody.
Give me.
Come back to us later. We'll go to a break.
No,
nobody, not even one.
I am just so disappointed by the quality of leadership we have had, and even people who I thought actually were pretty good, like David Cameron, reneging on problems. He actually put that coalition together. Quite statesman-like. Some of the things he did, and the baubles for everyone. Somebody brushed his hair, getting baubles. I mean, I'm just so disgusted by these people, and it's just all so tacky and horrible. Could we just have somebody who's just got some credibility and some decency and some a backbone and some morality? I don't think that should be too much to ask in an amazing country like this. I really don't. I'm old-fashioned like that. So let's talk about Angela Rayner. Comedy there for you folks. Angela Rayner apparently rejected an offer from Number 10. That's when his people talked to her people about her becoming the health secretary before they settled on James Murray. Who exactly? I have to say, some people were putting out, I retweeted a video of me talking to James Murray some years back, asking him about whether trans women were women, and the usual absolute nonsense he said. And of course he believes that trans women are women. I pointed out that means they're men, so you're saying women are men, and he just, the way they just get themselves into complete nonsense. I mean, like virtually all of the Labour front bench, to be honest, on this, but an absolute no-mark who's never done a proper job, who's now in charge of basically the biggest employer in this country. Terrifying. I don't know how much more worse it would have been if Angela Rayner had been in charge, but there's still big issues about her HMRC decision, and the fact that the taxman basically decided that, she hadn't been careless in... Even though the Parliamentary Standards Commissioner said she had been careless in basically being told twice in writing, you need to get specialist tax advice on your stamp duty on your second home because of your son's trust, and she did not get that advice, did not pay the 30 grand of tax 40 grand that she was due to pay. And there's also big question marks about some of her donors now. So a refrigeration company that was incorporated about a year and a half ago, giving her 150 grand. A company that's never even put in any accounts. Has apparently no money going through.
The thing with all of this is, of course, Labour likes to paint itself as holier than thou on everything. You can't be Prime Minister and have issues over your tax arrangements, or misunderstandings, or breaking the rules accidentally.
Well, this is where Nigel Farage may come unstuck as well.
You cannot be the person in charge of putting up people's taxes in this country, because every time you do it, people will throw that back in your face, and you'll have almost no credibility. The difference, I think, actually, with Reform. And this is difficult partly because Reform have not set out everything. I'm sure they'll come out and disagree, and they'll say, no, we have put it all out there, but people are not entirely clear. But the point is, Reform at least promises that what they want to do is create more wealth in this country. They want actually to make people wealthier. They don't want to punish them with more taxes or anything like that. And I think the public are more prepared to tolerate issues like Farage's face if the promise is, OK, I had this money, I'm going to give more money to you. I'm going to put more money in your pocket. I'm going to make this country wealthier. They're more prepared to go, do you know what? I'm prepared to give that man a chance.
There is that. And to a certain extent, he has been fairly Teflon on things. I'm old-fashioned. If this investigation shows this money was for security, I absolutely know that Nigel Farage needs security. I've not gone. People say I've not gone for him. I'm really glad there's a parliamentary investigation into that. I think he should produce the receipts, and I think we have a right to know. But I know he earned a hell of a lot of money from I'm a Celebrity, and a hell of a lot of money from working at GB News. He was paid a very good salary there, so he's got money. But again, security we're talking hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of £1,000s every year. There's a reason why Prince Harry moans about it, and he's a multi-millionaire. Let's also talk, I mean, we're going to be talking about those marches in just a couple of moments with someone who attended, the Pink Lady leader of Kent, Kerry Knight. She was one of the main speakers at the Tommy Robinson rally on Saturday, so we'll talk to her in a few moments about that. But let's also talk about something the government is looking at today. Give excuse to the Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy to get on our screens, never a good thing. Parents and guardians of children who break the law could now face prison themselves. Now, this follows after the Southport killing, Axel Cabana, and basically the parents. I mean, I was among those calling after we saw that report into what happened, calling for his parents, certainly his father, to be prosecuted because they were well aware that he was buying knives, well aware of what was going on, and that he was a threat, desperately trying to stop him leaving the house. When he left the house on the day that he killed all those 3 children and injured so many others, it was the first time he'd left the house in many, many, many months, and the last time he'd left the house was with a knife to try and kill children in his old school. So there was every reason for them to have stopped him, and they did not. And I'm sorry, you have to be... If your kid gets straight A's and is a wonderful child that runs at marathons for disabled children, you get to take the credit for being a great parent. If your kid goes and stabs people, I'm sorry, you've got to take some responsibility. But is this the idea of basically making parents and guardians responsible, is that going to actually pan out?
I worry that it's about sort of passing failures of the state onto the individuals, and as you say, the state is more than happy actually to sort of mollycoddle people and also crack down on people when it wants to. It plays up to its own advantage. But I do actually think that this is an important thing to recognise, that people have responsibilities, and there are intergenerational responsibilities in any society that wants to maintain itself, improve itself. You cannot simply be looking out for yourself and saying it's all about me. You have responsibilities to those who come next, and to those behind, and to those around. If that means people, especially actually I would say people who have moved to this country, you have a responsibility to assimilate beyond just yourself. It is also about instilling in your own children and your grandchildren, it doesn't just stop there, to keep on saying, no, actually, this is the society that we have bought into. If you don't like it, you can go elsewhere. But no, I think that that's an important thing.
But this is for people who are born and bred in 20 generations, Brits, as well.
Ultimately, yes, we can't. Well, this isn't me turning around saying you have to deport everybody. Obviously not. But I do.
No, but I don't think this is an issue of immigration.
No, I do. I do.
You do what?
I think that there is a particular tendency that we see in this country, and it's partly because actually we do not instill in people an idea of sort of national, shared national values or anything like that. We're told what national values are, and they're all about tolerance, and that seems to be it. You need that shared sense of community, which we do not instill in people, and I think you need to instill it like it's done in the United States.
But I'm sorry, I think there are plenty of born and bred 20 generation Brits who also have that view that not my problem, and there's you've got your kids who are sitting. I mean the unusual thing about Axel Cabana, by the way, that his parents were still married, because actually kids who give violence often growing up in homes where dad's not there, a string of random stepfather figures, mum's on her fags and her booze, and if drugs are in the home, there's violence. If dad is around, they know them, dad's probably in prison himself. I mean, that's the reality.
I agree with that about, a series of intergenerational, a disaffection, no real stake in society. I do understand all of that. The difference is those people do not bring their own grievances with them.
Yeah, but I know I'm going to move on from that genuinely, because I don't think that's. I don't think.
So anti-Semitism just emerged in a vacuum.
No, that's a completely different thing.
It's not a different thing at all.
No, that's
not a different thing at all.
No, that is completely. We've absolutely imported a lot of that issue. I'm just talking about. We're talking about the kids who go outside, kids who go out shoplifting. I think parents should absolutely be held to account. I don't think this is a uniquely immigrant issue.
I didn't say it was a uniquely immigrant, but I said it was something that does apply to this in particular.
It does apply in particular. Okay, but nevertheless, at what stage do we say that parents are responsible and what they have to do? Because a lot of the agencies that deal with these sort of kids say, the vast majority of violence from adults, these children have committed their first crime during their teenage years, some even younger, and again when they should be controlled. And I look at parents sometimes with their kids, and I'm literally just like, they've got a 5-year-old, they've got a 10-year-old behaving disgustingly, and you're just, wow, wait until that kid is 16 and 6 foot tall, because you are no longer in control when your child is someone you could easily pick up, frankly, by one arm and deal with them. We have an issue of failure of parenting, and parents go, well, what can I do? Well, here's the thing, if you don't deal with it, we're going to make you deal with it. But is punishing the parents going to be the answer?
I do think it is part of the solution. I think that there need to be ramifications for people who have full access to those children, who are in charge of instilling discipline, to say to them, actually, you do not get to wash your hands of the situation because you are not that person.
Yeah.
If the state, and we want to be in a situation where the state does not, in fact, control everybody's lives,
yes,
that means people taking that personal responsibility to raise their children.
Yeah,
I don't think there's a problem with punishment.
11:27, we're going to take a quick break. Just to let you know, the Prime Minister has arrived at Labour Party headquarters and he's been speaking to staff. He said he will support Labour's candidate in the upcoming Makerfield by-election, whoever they are, 100%. He insisted he is focused on the job that I was asked to do. I mean, are you? I don't think he spent any time actually doing the job of being Prime Minister in the last few weeks. I think he's entirely spent his time just trying to survive as Prime Minister. That's part of the problem, is it not? Love to hear your thoughts. Give us a call on all the topics we're talking about. 11:27 is the time. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. We'll get your calls up next. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 11:29 is the time. Let's go straight to your call. So 0344 499 1000. Let's go to Michael, who's in Hertfordshire. Michael, you want to talk about how Brexit has become the subject in this Makerfield by-election.
If England has said Scottish independence, the people have voted for it and there shouldn't be another vote.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing should be for Brexit. What's good for one is good for another.
Well, wasn't the idea that the claim was it Alex Salmond, when he was leading the SNP, he said in 2014 for the Scottish referendum, this is a once-in-a-generation vote. And then a few years later they went, oh, no, it's not. We're going to have like one every 10 years. And that,
Well, the same thing goes for Brexit. What people want to hear is what they're doing about immigration, how they're going to reduce the welfare bill, how they're going to increase defence, and why not drill for oil and gas? The whole thing is ridiculous. They're not talking about things we need, they're talking about things they want to do.
Yeah.
It's two different subjects.
And the idea that, again, that there are still a lot of people on the left, certainly most of the Labour Party, it would appear, who think that Brexit's, that literally, I think it was West Streeting or Andy Burnham saying it was the worst catastrophe that Britain, economic catastrophe. Simply, absolute nonsense. But also that somehow rejoining the EU, everything's going to be fine, particularly our economy. Have they looked at the economies of other EU countries lately?
Well, they have, but they won't listen to the facts. That's the problem.
Why do you think they're so obsessed with
We need an election. That's what we need.
Well, we're not going to get a general election.
No, we're not, because they want to hang on to their jobs. But all of them are atrocious, and they're embarrassing. It's just got ridiculous.
Well, Michael's not impressed on this Monday morning, that's for sure. Thank you for that call. Matthew is in Warrington and wants to talk about actually the topic we're going to get to up next, about those marches on Saturday. Matthew, what do you want to say?
Hello, Mrs. GHP. Lovely to talk to you again. Yeah, so there's two points. If you're going to do a march in London, they should pay for the security. They should pay for the police. That way, then, it shouldn't come out of taxpayers. Because football clubs have to pay for the police and the security on a Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, but that's because they're making money from the event, and they're multi-million-pound businesses.
But why should it? Last year, we took our cadets to London to go and see the war rooms and horse guards and all the rest of it. We couldn't go near Parliament because it was doing. It was all red flares and everything going off, and it's not fair on people who are tourists or young. It's quite scary.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. A sort of weekly march, fortnightly march or something for 3 years. I've got to be honest. We're done. No, but here's the thing. If you charge people, and we are talking about hundreds and hundreds and tons of thousands of pounds for policing, if you charge people for that, then basically, if you've got a wealthy donor or you're a wealthy cause, you can get the money to pay for that. But if you're a cause, ordinary working class people who don't have that sort of money, you won't get to have your say. So that won't work. That will actually limit our democracy only to people who've got money.
Yeah, but a wealthy donor will only do it once or twice. These people are doing these marches in London nearly every weekend. So at some point, you've got to call it, hang on a minute. And why would they, you had the FA Cup yesterday, on Saturday, and you had two big marches. Someone just needs to have a set of go and go, oh, we're not doing this. The police.
But what about if there was a cause you felt very strongly about and you wanted to go on a march and they said, well, you can't because you can't afford the policing, or you might disturb some tourists?
Well, I wouldn't go marching because I don't think it really achieves much anyway. It's all, once in a while when you get a really big one, but it becomes the norm now, doesn't it?
No, and I agree with you. And I'm not really. I've done a few marches. I've gone on way more marches than I ever expected I would go on. I'm not really. I don't think people on the right are marchy people. I think it's very much a left wing, haven't got anything else to do sort of thing, and that's how they get their virtue signalling done. But here's still the thing. There will still be a cause at some point that you will care desperately about, and they say you can't have that march, mate, because it might disturb, Jan, who's on a trip from the United States and wants to go to the House of Parliament, and you can't afford the hundreds of thousands or the millions for the policing. Sorry, you don't get to have your say, Matthew.
I don't. I just think it's got to the point where it's ridiculous.
I agree with you on that, but I don't know if that's the solution.
And, I did enough marching in the Boss Guards, so I don't. I'm paying the price for it now with my knees. But, if you want to go marching, go up to Caterham and join up the paras and the guards. You can get plenty of marching in there.
Loving that, Matthew. Thank you very much, and thanks for your service. I think on behalf of everyone here, Matthew in Warrington. Fair point. Fair point there, Benedict.
Marching is for paras, not protesters. There you go.
Here you go.
That's a happy slogan.
Well,
Vote for me.
We'll put that to my next guest, Kerry Knight. She's a leader of Kent's Pink Ladies, and she was one of the speakers at that rally yesterday. We'll come to her up next. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back. This is Talk. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's get straight to my next guest now, who is Kerry Knight. She's the leader of the Kent Pink Ladies and was one of the speakers at the United Kingdom Tommy Robinson rally on Saturday. A very, very good afternoon to you, Kerry. Good morning. Why do I keep saying randomly? It's good morning. Kerry, thank you for joining us.
Hiya, Julia. How are you doing?
Very well. Apart from that, I don't know what time of day it is. I normally get it the other way round after the top of the hour. Kerry, how did you feel before you went on the march that you were being told by the Prime Minister that you were going on a hate march by the far right?
Angry. I was furious, Julia. I'm not going to lie. My children was there supporting that march and me on Saturday. You know, I feel so strongly about this. How dare he instill this type of propaganda into my children? I mean, he was travelling schools up and down the country spewing the same rhetoric. I was furious.
And you were one of the speakers at the rally. Now, I don't hold a candle for Tommy Robinson, so I wouldn't go one of his marches, but I know that the vast majority of people on those marches are absolutely ordinary, law-abiding, hard-working, patriotic Brits. I know lots of people who've gone on those rallies from all walks of life, all ethnicities, all backgrounds, and wanting to fly their flag and wanting to... Would you prefer to go on a rally that wasn't Tommy Robinson organised, but had the same message?
I will go on any rally that is organised by anybody that is trying to unite the kingdom. At the end of the day, this is bigger than one man, and that's why I get really angry and really cross. He is trying his best to unite the kingdom. Everyone can't get along. We're always going to have a difference of opinions. Not everybody's going to agree on every point, but the ultimate end goal is the same. We want a safe country for us and our children to grow up in. And I will do what it takes to get there. And if that means standing and sharing a stage with people who are controversial characters, I mean, the Pink Ladies themselves have even become controversial characters. Yeah. I don't listen to the rhetoric, and I won't listen to the rhetoric when the safety of my children are, you know, the end goal here.
And let's go back to the reason why the Pink Ladies even exist. And this is because when there were people demonstrating, understandably, outside asylum hotels where men had been allegedly, by the way, all later convicted of assaulting young girls, young women, whilst living in asylum hotels, having arrived in this country illegally on those dinghies and having no right to be here. And when people were demonstrating, immediately it was like, oh, it's the far right, it's troublemakers. And that was the point when the Pink Ladies went, well, actually, we're just ordinary local women. We are wives and mothers and grandmothers and aunts and sisters. And we just want our children and ourselves to be safe. I mean, I think genuinely, you know, there are an awful lot of politicians who could learn from some of the campaigning you guys have done. We're wearing pink, we're women. Seriously? And now you're going to call us all far right? And that's a very strong message. But it does end up associating with a man who, I'm sorry, but has called for basically, you know, the repatriation of Muslims in this country. Now, I'm as concerned as you are about illegal migration, the unbelievably heightened risk from particular countries where immigrants from those countries, particularly illegal immigrants from those countries, are posing a threat to us criminally. There is also, I think, a massive, massive issue with us having an immigrant legal population in this country of people from countries where the culture has very different attitude towards women's rights, towards, you know, I don't know, Jews and to general behaviour. I think we've got to tackle those issues, and I don't think it's racist or bigoted to say so. But some of the speakers that you spoke alongside at that rally, a lot of people would even have heard those speakers. A lot of people done the march, headed off to the pub, take the kids home on the train or whatever. A lot of people weren't even, you can see people in the square not even listening because, you know, concentrating on an hour of speakers, you know. But some of those were people from, you know, what are genuinely far-right organisations across Europe. There was, I think, 11 speakers who were banned. Some elected, you know, like a Polish MP elected people. Were you or are you concerned about associating your very legitimate cause with some aspects of what is a genuinely far-right politics?
Obviously, you know, we are a movement of women and mothers. And yes, we always have to take into account the effects that standing alongside certain individuals will have on us. However, I don't see it as standing alongside certain individuals. I was basically just sharing the same platform that was available at a different time. There aren't many people who are willing to give us that platform, Julia. Yourself, you know, Talk TV are brilliant. GB News used to be fantastic. But unfortunately, of late, we don't even, you know, we don't seem to get the same support from GB News either. So, you know, it's about us getting our message out there. To be honest with you, I didn't hear a lot of the speakers myself.
Yeah.
So I can't really have an informed opinion on what it is you're referring to. I didn't hear a lot of the actual speeches. I know that, you know, things are put in place to ensure that certain things are not said on stage. I had to submit a copy of my speech in advance. So, you know, obviously things are put in place. The team do make sure that people are, you know, abiding by laws and rules.
Yeah, no, that's a very, very good point. And again, as you say, it's in terms of getting the platform. And it is interesting that any rally, I think if it wasn't even organised by Tommy Robinson's lot, I think any rally at all where people are flying the Union flag, and we've seen this when local people have gone,
we fly the pink one, Julia.
I love you, I love it. But when people, you know, we've had people putting up the Palestinian flag and the LGBTQ whatever plus flag, and that's fine. But if people go, no, I'm going to put the Union flag up, I'm going to put the England flag up, it's immediately decried as far right and racist and bigoted, and saying that it intimidates people. But no one in this country should feel intimidated by seeing the national flag.
I know, and especially in a pink version too.
Absolutely. In terms of, I must ask you, in terms of the Labour leadership contest, you know, we've got Keir Starmer saying he's going to support Andy Burnham, and he's standing in this seat, we believe, in Makerfield in Manchester, and he wants to get in. And we've got all these other runners and riders who would like to put their hats in the ring as well. What do you have a preference at all in terms of who is leading this country? Of the options from Labour or other parties, in terms of a party that or an individual that you could trust who would tackle the issue that you are most concerned about, which is illegal migrants being housed, you know, hotels and you know, HMOs around our towns and cities and villages, and young women and girls being put at risk?
Do you know what, Julia? I dipped my toe in a little while ago, and I did sort of join Advance. But I've since realised that actually a lot of it is just noise. We're 3 years away from a general election at the moment, and I find that a lot of the rhetoric is just changed depending on how and what is popular at that time.
Right.
So, you know, for me, ultimately, it's a lot of distraction and a lot of noise. As an individual, I try not to distract myself too much with the politics side of it, and ultimately put my focus onto current issues and current, you know, there's a lot that goes on that we unfortunately are not allowed to publicise, as I'm sure you also are privy to as well. So, you know, we spend our time supporting individuals within our communities. We've got our own pink ladies around the country, and we've all got our own pages. So we are constantly there and being a support for many women who are unable to access, you know, things like support in their local area, or don't feel like they're able to approach people. So we do a lot behind the scenes, and that's where my attention's best focused.
No,
in 3 years' time, I will listen to who's got to say what and make an informed decision.
Really appreciate you joining us, Kerry Knight, leader of the Pink Ladies in Kent, showing, by the way, the political dexterity, which I would really like to see in some of our politicians sometime. Kerry Knight, thank you very much indeed. Benedict Spence, listen to all that. I mean, there is this massive issue, isn't there, that everyone is just like, oh, you've got Union Jack, you must be far right. I mean, there's no other country in the world where this happens, but the Prime Minister basically slagging off this rally. Yes, it was lower attendance than last time, but then so was the Nakba march as well. Everyone's claiming millions. You leave Wembley and you walk down Wembley Way to get the tube, and you see how many people, like, that's 70,000 people. I'm like, no, it's not, it's about 50,000, because 20,000 have gone the other way, or gone to their cars. I mean, and people go, oh, it was 2 million, it was 250,000. It's like, no, seriously, it never is as many people as people think. But slagging off just one of those, was very telling.
It's very telling, and it's very tedious, because all it does, whenever you hear from left-wing politicians or indeed journalists that the far right is on the march and all of this, everything, you've got to be careful because the far right, they're coming, they're on their way, they then respond to that with policies that just make it more likely that people are going to be irritated.
Yeah.
The double standards at play make it more likely that people are going to be radicalised.
Well, they think we're both far right as well. So, I mean...
I'm far too lazy to be far right. I can get out of bed before midday.
As our people's call it,
I have no idea what I'm doing here.
Involves a lot of... We neither do we. He just turns up every Monday. We can't get rid of him. What can I say? When it's like, we're too lazy to march. But what did you make? There was one scene where three young French activists, and they very much are on the far right. I use that term because of the stuff that they have said. And they turned up in niqabs, and niqabs are different from burqas. Burqas, you can't actually see the eyes. You could see the eyes. But three women on stage. They walk on stage at this rally wearing their niqabs, full-length black gobs, just the eye slits. Of course, they get booed. And then people are shouting, take it off, take it off. I mean, it was actually quite funny. And then they take them off, and then they're young, attractive women in their much sort of, more, let's face it, more attractive, becoming outfits. Some of the guys carried on shouting, take it off, which I also thought was funny. A lot of people going, this is outrageous, this is, the usual suspects. This is mocking brown Muslim women. I mean, it's not the colour of the skin irrelevant. Mocking Muslim. Now, was it mocking Muslim women? Because my thing is, we're allowed to mock it. Yeah, I don't think you should go up and mock a woman in the street because she's wearing a burqa or niqab. I have a physical reaction to those outfits. I think they are physically repulsive signs of oppression and under a political ideology that would basically say, rape her over there, she's not covered up. I mean, I'm sorry, they're disgusting outfits, and I think they should be banned in this country, absolutely banned in the public space. But we have a right to mock Islam. We have a right to mock any religion.
Yes.
But we also have a right to mock that particular outfit, which, by the way, fewer than 10% of Muslim women in the world wear, and most of them wear it under regimes where they are required to wear it, and when the law says they're not required to wear it anymore, what a funny surprise, they take them off.
Yes, actually, the key thing here is that our country and France have very long, very proud traditions of satire, of mocking religion, and this is the thing. Right now, nobody would have had a problem if it was mocking Christian or anything like that.
Fine.
They would have embraced it. So why is it different when it comes to another religion?
Absolutely. 11:48 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to be talking about another long tradition, and that's the BBC basically being consumed by woke. We're going to talk to the former head of political programmes at the BBC, Rob Burley, about why an even more senior boss has claimed she was driven out of the top job by trans activist bullying. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:50 is the time. Let's talk right now about, well, the BBC. It's the first day for the new BBC Director General. He starts his job today, but he certainly has a tough job to do, given, well, what we keep hearing from former staff. Fascinating interview in Unheard, published over the last few days, by former BBC political programmes editor Rob Burley, and his interview with various old BBC staffers, including the former head of news at the BBC, Fran Unsworth, about, well, the woke madness that has been taking over that organisation, in particular the trans bullying going on. Let's talk about that with Rob Burley right now. I'm delighted to say he joins us on the show. Good morning to you, Rob.
Morning, Julia. How are you?
Thank you very, very well indeed. Well, I say you used to be head of a political programme. You used to book me onto shows like Andrew Marr. I'm pretty sure I've been blacklisted by them for my outrageous views on not thinking that men can be women and the like. But it does sound like that actually it's not been very pleasant for an awful lot of people working at the BBC. Tell us what Fran Unsworth had to say to you.
Well, she recounted a period in that job, which is the job I guess she'd probably always aspired to run BBC News, which was kind of made increasingly unpleasant and impossible to kind of manage because of the way in which, not just on trans, but on a number of kind of issues, staff took particular positions on things, which made it a kind of trench warfare between them and her when she attempted to sort of address the question, address the problem. But clearly the part of the issue was that the management didn't really address the problem very well at all, and there was never any kind of very clear message that this has to stop. This kind of bias in favour of one side of an argument has to stop. I mean, instead, there was kind of always a kind of paralysis and fear that they themselves, as she said, might be cancelled. She feared that she herself would be cancelled.
But this is the thing, and she was someone who would surely be expected by other junior member staff, or even rather senior member staff, but not head of news, that she could direct this, and she would be the one saying, "Hey, everybody, we're a news organisation. There are different views on these things." Now, I'm of the view that a man can become a woman is a rather bizarre view. I mean, why don't they just have a view? Why don't they do maths programmes claiming that 2 + 2 = 5 and have done with it? Because that's the level of madness we're at. But we know that, Stonewall and other trans activist organisations basically got their tentacles into the BBC and basically were controlling everything. I mean, that's why whenever they do an interview with like a single mum about how does she make ends meet, it ends up being it's someone who's a man identified as a woman who and his issues. I mean, we got, if in doubt, let's put another drag queen on the telly and talk about their woes. I mean, it is quite, it's kind of weird now at the point at which the BBC is obsessed. But you're saying this wasn't just happening on screen; this was happening behind the scenes as well. So any journalist who wanted to tackle any of these issues, even just giving both sides, not even the pro-women side on this, they would basically be not unsubtly told, your career will be over if you do this.
No, they weren't. They wouldn't have been told in such explicit terms. I think it was. I mean, for example, at the period of time when if you remember, it's important to remember, by the way, Theresa May's role in all this. Theresa May stood up and said in 2017, I believe it was, that she believed in self-ID, which basically meant that a man could say he's a woman and gain access to spaces that are women's space, sports, all of the things we know that we're now talking about, and that was kind of. That was really barely covered by the BBC. I was running Politics Live at the time, and I made sure that we did cover that. And we I think we were the only television outlet that covered the consultation period on the back of that.
Well, the BBC, we were covering it here on Talk. I'm talking
about the BBC, so I'm sure other people were, but I'm saying that there was a kind of. So it was almost like there was a kind of. It was a mission. It was like it just wasn't there. It was as if the reason it wasn't there was because there was lots of people who thought there is no debate here. That there's this one side of this argument, and it's the right side, which is that of course trans women are women and trans men are men, and that's it.
And anyone saying anything different was just a bigot who shouldn't be on air, shouldn't be listened to, and shouldn't work at the BBC.
Yes, so that was the transphobia was always bandied around. So the effect of that is that people don't want to be called those names. They don't want to be in a position where they have to defend themselves. They don't want to be in this fight. So what they do is retreat inwards, and they just decide not to cover it, because not covering it is a way of avoiding the heat. And so that's quite effective. They were actually very effective in this kind of the approach they took to no debate, and they had people who agreed with them.
And the thing is, this isn't just an issue with the issue of trans. I mean, I think this has been an issue on climate change. I mean, again, Ofcom is part of the problem there, saying that climate change is settled science. absolute load of utter trash, absolute nonsense. But that impacts in terms of how the BBC covers this issue. We've also, I would say Brexit. I was on the BBC a lot around that time. The shocked faces on the BBC newsrooms when Brexit happened, because as far as they were concerned, this was just something that some racists in Sunderland believed in, and no one else did. Certainly, no one they met. This is an ongoing issue, isn't it?
But I don't think the examples you've given are quite the same as this one, because what we're saying, the Brexit one, there might be arguments about something. Here, there's a fundamental truth. I mean, she says in the interview, she says, before the Supreme Court sort of reasserted that a woman is a woman, we didn't have the evidence, she said, to kind of decide which way to...
Apart from before our own eyes.
Yeah, indeed, exactly. It was that for me. It's like, well, no, we've gone through the looking glass here, because we know with the reality of that. Let's not. You can talk about how you handle the desire to identify as the opposite sex, but you can't change it. Yeah. You are one or the other, apart from a very tiny number of people.
Did you face accusations of being bigoted and transphobic?
I think I do think there was perhaps a sense in that people wondered why I was so interested in the subject. The reason I was interested in the subject, to be honest, was because of that very thing I just mentioned. Because it seemed to me I was being expected, or people were being expected, as journalists or even in normal life, to assert something that we knew wasn't true.
Yeah.
And when that happens, I smell a rat. So that was really...
you were being a journalist. Does Fran Unsworth, I mean, she was a very, very senior figure. I mean, she was there for a long, time at the BBC for a long time, but director of BBC News for 4 or 5 years. Does she regret not standing up to the bullying and indeed not protecting her employees from this? I mean, we know there were all these battles at Radio 4's Women's Hour, a programme I don't approve of at all anyway, the 23 hours aren't for men. But they barely touched any of these issues for years while proclaiming to be a show about women. When the biggest threat to women's rights and safety happened, they just went, zip it. Does she regret that she didn't speak out?
Well, first of all, I would say this about her, which is that she actually did intervene and make sure various things that did happen that were good. So, for example, there was a very important piece of work by Stephen Nolan that was made out of Northern Ireland about Stonewall on the BBC. Yeah. And there was a lot of opposition of people. They didn't want that to be made. They didn't want it to run. And she insisted it would be. Also, there was one of the most bizarre aspects of this is you had Stonewall, an organisation that's led to represent kind of gay and lesbian people, who was critical of lesbians who didn't want to have a sexual relationship with a male body. Yeah. So that's Stonewall saying that, and so there was a piece covering that issue, which was faced all sorts of opposition, but Fran got involved and made sure it ran. So she did do things behind the scenes, and so I don't think by any means she should be presented as being the sort of worst.
That said, did everyone notice that in the midst of all the stuff about drag queens? I mean, I think they probably didn't. That's the worry. Do you think there's still a problem at the BBC now?
Yeah, I think there still is. I think it's, but to be fair to the BBC, I think they are trying now to try and address some of this. So you have, for example, the nonsense that you would have a report about a sex offender. There was a man who identified as a woman, and you would present that as being a woman having carried out that sex.
I have to say, the Daily Mail still does that, which does my head in absolutely every single time. Really appreciate it. Matt Britton, the new Director General, has got quite a lot to get his teeth into. Rob Burley, former head of political programmes at the BBC, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Just a quick response from Benedict Spence.
I mean, it's just nuts that this was done sort of, in the corporation that people are supposed to trust the most. This insane fringe stuff was pushed. Nobody's interest. Nobody wanted it. We were given it anyway.
Yeah, again, there's simple, factual untruths. Basically being sold to absolute lies. I'd say we've stood up on this stuff. I keep saying to my bosses, seriously, been right about everything. Just because people call me a bigot doesn't mean I wasn't right the entire time. They're just making those words up. Up next, more on Makerfield. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, thank you very much indeed for your company. If you have missed anything on the show, do go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. I don't know how we came up with that title. That we paid consultants a fortune for that. And hit subscribe. You never have to miss a thing. Coming up, we're going to be discussing Andy Burnham's allies accusing Wes Streeting of trying to derail the Mayor's campaign for Prime Minister by calling for Britain to rejoin the EU, playing into the hands of Reform UK. The Mayor of Greater Manchester has distanced himself from calls to rejoin the EU as he campaigns ahead of the Makerfield by-election. The Prime Minister in the last hour or so has said that he will support whoever Labour's by-election candidate is 100%. I'm not sure whoever it is. It should be Andy Burnham, we expect, that will actually want him to come and campaign for him, though, because you're basically campaigning for Andy Burnham to oust the Prime Minister, aren't you? A big spit in whether the Tories should actually stand aside of the by-election to allow Reform UK to block Andy Burnham's win and therefore return to politics. That could be very interesting. Also, we're going to be talking to Richard Tice about that and Nigel Farage's various woes over that £5 million gift from a crypto billionaire. And we're going to be talking to the wonderful Sal Grover about the Australian Federal Court, which has ruled extraordinarily, very different from our Supreme Court ruling last year, that trans women, i.e. men, are allowed to enter women-only spaces because in legal terms, sex is not based on biological sex. These people are stark, staring insane. Anyway, all of that coming up. I'd love to hear from you. We'll get your calls in the next half hour after Andy Burnham's allies have accused Wes Streeting of basically sabotaging the Mayor's of Manchester's campaign to become Prime Minister by making the Makerfield by-election about Brexit. I want to know what your reaction is to that. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost £1. Standard network rate message. I know a lot of you also want to have your say on issues like, those marches at the weekend and plenty more besides. Benedict Spence is still with us. He's a Conservative commentator. Before we go to our next guest, I just want to quickly get your thoughts on this, just in terms of, do you think that, we've got the MP, Josh Simons for the Makerfield, has stood down. We're going to have, they're moving for the by-election to be on June the 18th. We're going to get that tomorrow. Prime Minister says he's going to campaign and support whoever's running for it. Do you think we'll actually end up with the Prime Minister going to Makerfield to campaign for Andy Burnham to become an MP again so he can oust Keir Starmer as Prime Minister? I
think the Prime Minister is probably well aware that the best thing he could do if he didn't want Andy Burnham to become an MP is to go and campaign on his behalf.
Yes,
I think Keir Starmer is actually playing a rather clever game. He's not going to be Prime Minister for much longer, but he knows how to eke this out. That's what I'd say.
Fascinating. Thank you very much indeed. Right, well, let's talk to somebody who may have a better idea of what the Prime Minister is thinking. We hear something different every couple of days, don't we? He's James Lyons. He's a former Director of Communications for Keir Starmer in Number 10 for just about a year to September 25. Thank you so much for joining us, James.
Good afternoon, Julia.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, you know how much I disapprove of, of poacher turned gamekeeper, one of our many Westminster journalists who went to the dark side working in Number 10. But many of my old former colleagues have done it. But you've got an idea of what the Prime Minister thinks. You were working closely with him. When he was saying last week that basically, he wasn't going to go, and now he's talking about how 100%, he's told Labour Party headquarters staff today, he'll be supporting Andy Burnham's by-election. And we're told by David Lammy, his Deputy Prime Minister, that he hasn't got a timetable for leaving. Does Keir Starmer think he can stay?
Well, first of all, Julia, I have been clean of journalism for 10 years now. Very much. So it wasn't just that I went to Downing Street. I did a few other things. All
right,
first.
we'll let you off.
But look, I'm tempted to say, and this is in jest, that he will support Andy Burnham as a rope supports the hanging man. But no, in all seriousness, look, I think the the Prime Minister will 100% believe in his own mind. He is the right person to take this country and his party through the Omni crisis that has been caused by a war in the Middle East and war in Europe. I think this still probably ends with him having to set out some kind of timetable for his departure, or having that decision taken out of his own hands.
Right. I mean, this is the thing. It does seem quite a few weeks now that he is the most delusional person in all this, and that he still thinks that he can survive, because he is. I mean, I've been saying he's a dead man crawling, not even walking anymore, and he's the only one who doesn't seem to know. But as you all know from being in Number 10 and being a political, senior political journalist for many years before that, that actually the people who surround a prime minister, it's in all of their interest to shore him up and buoy him up and say, yeah, you're the man, because of course they're all going to lose their jobs if he goes.
Well, not all of them will, because obviously there are a lot of civil servants around him as well, and they will simply move on to the next prime minister. But one person's delusion is another one's self-belief, and the prime minister has always felt he's been underestimated and written off, and he believes, nobody gave him a hope in hell's chance of winning a majority at the general election when he took over the Labour Party, and in fact he ended up with a landslide. So and he turned the party around after that Hartlepool by-election loss. So I think I have rarely come across people, anyone as resilient as this Prime Minister.
We've heard this word used about him quite a lot, yeah.
Yeah, it is true. He is extremely resilient individual.
But he's resilient, and yet he's, best case scenario, 16 U-turns. I think the Tories claim there's like another 4 or 5 as well. But a resilient Prime Minister doesn't U-turn on most policies, does he?
Well, that's the interesting thing about this Prime Minister. As you know, he is not a what you would call a career politician. And he genuinely believes that U-turns can be a sign of strength. Now, you and I have spent long enough in Westminster to know that that's not necessarily how it works. I mean, it does a number of things for you. First of all, it gives, if you do too many of them, it can give a sense of incoherence to the public, to your opponents in and outside your own party. It means they will always try and push and test and see if they can get their own way as soon as they see that you are open to that. And then third, actually, this is probably the most corrosive point here, it burns up trust with colleagues who are sent out to defend lines.
Yeah, and that they just feel humiliated when it changes. I would say the thing is, if you're U-turning on a policy because things have changed and it doesn't work, that's different. If you're just throwing out random policies that weren't in the manifesto, you haven't discussed with anyone and everyone hates them, and then what a surprise, everyone hates them, that is definitely a sign of weakness.
You Julia, are not old enough to remember this like I do, but David Miliband once was asked if he was doing a U-turn on the Today programme, and he said, yes, we're doing a vaulting 180-degree U-turn. So you can do them occasionally, but you
only
need occasionally to own them.
Let's talk about what's actually going to happen realistically. We've Josh Simons, the MP for Makerfield, has resigned, and I'm very glad to see the back of him as an MP after him attempting to smear colleagues of mine in this very building at the Sunday Times for perfectly legitimate political journalism. So he's good riddance to him. He wants Andy Burnham to take over the seat. Andy Burnham wants him to take over the seat. An awful lot of party members and MPs want Andy Burnham to take over the seat. However, technically, he's not yet the candidate. Yet we've already seen the likes of the Culture Secretary, Lisa Nandy, out campaigning for Andy Burnham. Is there really...
the Makerfield constituency Labour Party have within their gift to do one of the most amusing things in British politics for a very long time on Thursday.
Yeah. Just say, actually, we're going to go for Andy Burnham is a local guy, but just going for someone completely different. That would be quite amusing, it's got to be said. But, the NEC is going to give permission, it's going to be a seat. It's not an ideal seat for him. A lot of people saying, he's chosen the seat because he wants to take the fight to reform. Load of absolute, hogwash. He would like a much safer seat as an option for that, such as a Labour safe seat exists. And we know that this is a seat where 66 also 65% voted for Brexit back in 2016. The local elections just a couple of weeks ago, all the wards that came up went to Reform. They had more than 50% of the vote, I think. I mean, realistically, this is going to be a very hard seat. Has it been made harder by Wes Streeting just throwing in, talking about wanting to rejoin the EU and focusing on Brexit? And Andy Burnham's views obviously being asked about whether he still stood by his calls that we should at some point return to the EU. Do you think that could scupper Andy Burnham's chances? And did you think that was a deliberate tactic by Wes Streeting?
Well, first of all, I think Andy Burnham would much rather fight a seat in his own backyard than fight a seat in, say, Scotland, where seats are becoming available, or another part of the country. I'm not going to pretend that I am an expert in the politics of the northwest of England, but I am spoken to a number of pollsters who have been up there who say that Andy Burnham literally walks on water up there, and while it's going to be the mother of all by-elections. I mean, Reform won't just throw the kitchen sink at this. With the table, the chairs, the fridge, the cooker, and anything else they can get their hands on. He does have a realistic route back to Westminster that runs through Makerfield. Now, look, I don't doubt Wes Streeting's sincerity when he says that he would like to rejoin the EU. I'm sure it's purely coincidental that it is causing difficulties for Andy Burnham, but Andy Burnham was going to face those questions anyway. I think one thing I would take slight issue with is Wes Streeting's claim that he's launched his leadership campaign. No, he hasn't, because he hasn't stumped up the 80 names needed to trigger a contest.
This is a very fair point, and there isn't, technically speaking, a contest at all at the current time. In terms of Andy Burnham's chances, okay, so we'll see what happens, and lots of pressure on Camille Badenoch. Should she stand down the Tory candidate? I don't think there's a chance that happening at all. Reform have said they're going to throw the kitchen sink at it. We're going to talk to Richard Tice, the Deputy Leader of Reform, in just a couple of moments after you.
Maybe you could ask him whether or not Nigel Farage is going to spend any of that 5 million quid he got from the...
I'm going to guess the answer to that would be no, on account of that was, we're told, for his security. But yeah, we're going to talk about that issue, of course, that we will as well. But
sorry, just on that point, it's always seemed a very round figure for his security. I don't know how they arrived at the exact amount he'll require for his security for the rest of his life is £5 million. It just seems a little bit odd to me.
I will happily put that to Richard Tice. We could talk about Angela Rayner and her £150,000 from refrigeration company in donations. Nice round amount for her staffing officers. She did declare it, but a company that's never actually submitted an annual return, created in 2024, giving her 150 grand. I've got questions about all of it, James. I'm not going to lie.
That was transparent, and is unlike, who amongst us hasn't taken 5 million quid from a crypto king in a private capacity and then gone back into politics and campaigned on policies that would boost the crypto industry?
Yeah, it's a fair point, and one we'll be putting to Richard Tice. Absolutely. Happily put that to Nigel Farage, but, isn't on the show. In terms of Andy Burnham, though, in terms of his appeal, again, very popular figure, Greater Manchester Mayor. He's no doubt at all, he's a much better communicator than Keir Starmer is. But in terms of some of the key issues that a lot of people really do care about, things like, grooming gangs and issues like that, a lot of criticism. The likes of Maggie Oliver, who is the big whistleblower on grooming gangs, saying that Andy Burnham basically did nothing at all to actually push for prosecutions of men who were clearly identified in various reviews as being serial rapists and abusers of children. He was health secretary at the Mid Staffordshire hospital scandal time. Lots of questions about whether or not this miracle growth that's been going on in the city of Manchester does actually exist or not, or whether these are fairy tale figures. Do you think that actually he's had quite an easy ride from local media, very easy ride from national media, seen as the king up north, and he hasn't really actually been perhaps under the same pressure, the same scrutiny as people like, say, Keir Starmer has been answering for a government in the last 2 years, and actually a lot of the shine might wear off?
What is certainly true is there is no position, whether it's Mayor of Greater Manchester or even, frankly, Chancellor, where you are exposed to the same level of scrutiny as you are as the Prime Minister. Everything you've ever done, said, everyone you've ever met is up for grabs. Andy will definitely be feeling that kind of exposure. And you're right, he has got a very long kind of track record in politics, which is rather unlike, as I say, unlike the Prime Minister. But, anyone who has been around as long as Andy has knows the kind of scrutiny that comes with these decisions, whether it's on his time in cabinet, his time as mayor, or what he chooses to go running in.
Indeed, he's taken a lot of stick for that, and he's taken the joke. Do you think there's also an element though where Labour Party turning in on itself, focusing, doing exactly the same thing that the Tories did and made all the mistakes that they did when they were in power, is an absolute disaster for this country, and the electorate will not appreciate not just the infighting but the internal focus. So we're talking about people genuinely struggling to pay their bills, to afford to put fuel in the car to get to work and back, and there we are. We'll have politicians squabbling about Brexit. We've got the Prime Minister talking about far-right marches, about people, flying the Union flag. Do you really think that this is going to actually do anything to bolster Labour's chances, whether or not Andy Burnham wins or anyone else wins for the next election?
I mean, it's certainly a roll of the dice. You mentioned the cost of filling up the car there, and obviously news has emerged over the last 24 hours in parts of the brilliant Kate Ferguson at the Sun on Sunday that the increase in fuel duty that was due to come in later this year has been scrapped. That is
that they're planning to announce that this week. But again, no one thought that increase was going to happen.
My point, Julia. My point was going to be that is going to cost the exchequer. God, put my teeth in. Billions and billions of pounds, and that is not getting any cut through because we are back in the realms of a leadership circus, and. The danger is that this just turns off voters who are frankly sick of what lots of people called the psychodrama of the Tory years. Look, there weren't too many promises made during the general election campaign. That was a deliberate strategy. I know that because I helped to write the manifesto. But one of the things that the Labour Party did promise was to end the chaos. And yet here we are.
Here we are. Well, just one final question. We've just had a report from the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, and they've warned that Britain is hitting the limit of higher taxes and called on Labour to focus on cutting welfare. Massive big spending to balance the books. They signalled that an Andy Burnham premiership risks losing the confidence of financial markets, saying the UK faced a set of economic realities that would limit the scope for further tax rises or borrowing to fund public spending. Now, Andy Burnham's talked about other policy, whether this comes up on the by-election doorsteps, but renationalisation of this. He's got the same set of backbenchers which Keir Starmer has, who basically saying we're not going to allow any cuts to welfare spending at all. The reality is, whoever's Prime Minister is going to face exactly the same issues.
Have you been reading the column I wrote over the weekend?
I did read your column.
Look, changing leader, although Labour are not making it look like this at the moment, changing a leader is the easy bit, right? At the end of the day, whoever is in 10 Downing Street will be confronted by the same set of problems that have confronted Keir Starmer. Low growth, not a lot of money, people's living standards being hit really, really hard, and backbenchers who, have all sorts of interesting ideas, or most of which cost money. And the danger is, frankly, that whoever is Prime Minister, they end up getting crushed between the immovable object, the Parliamentary Labour Party, and the immovable force and the unstoppable object of the bond market.
It's going to be a delight for all of us, isn't it? We'll leave it there. James Lyons, great to talk to you, former Director of Communications for Keir Starmer in Number 10. Take a quick break. Up next, going to talk to Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Richard Tice. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 12:23 is the time. Let's go straight to my next guest, Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Richard Tice MP. Very good afternoon to you, Richard.
Good afternoon to you. Another quiet week in political paradise.
Absolutely. So just want to ask you, obviously you're going to be throwing the kitchen sink, your party leader has said, at this Makerfield by-election. What chance do you think you're going to have to win it? And have you selected your candidate, I assume a local man or woman? And crucially also, do you think that Brexit is going to be a big issue on the doorsteps?
Well, I was there yesterday and we are already getting a fantastic response on the doors, and we think we've got a cracking chance. And Mr. Burnham may well have bitten off way more than he could ever chew. So, yeah, it's going to be a big battle. But the idea that people in Makerfield want to go back to the European Union is for the birds. They quite rightly voted 65% for Brexit. They're fuming at being abandoned by the two main parties. And yeah, we're very bullish, and we're going to give, as Nigel said, we're throwing everything at it. And let's wait and see. And of course, we'll have a fantastic candidate who'll be announced in the next couple of days.
Are you waiting to see whether Burnham is nominated or not for Labour first?
No, far from it.
And is it going to be? Is your candidate going to be one of, for instance, the local people, fancy the local councillors, for instance, who just won in the local elections?
I'd love to give you an exclusive, Julia, but I'd be for the high jump. So I'm just going to have to leave it out there, man or
so
woman.
have you decided? Has your party decided on the candidate already, or you're not telling us until the seat is officially available, or have you not yet decided?
It's a bit of both. When you get to a short list, you then obviously vet a short list, and you double and treble check. Otherwise, we're getting into terrible trouble from people like you.
Vetting seems to be a bit of a sore point. I mean, for the Green Party, seem to be even worse than you lot, but
it's not a sore point. I mean, the reality is when you've got 5,000 candidates, the odd one's going to slip through. It's the nature of life.
Okay.
But here's the real thing, Julia. Voters, they just want reform, and they've actually said at the last elections. Couple of weeks ago, they said we want more reform, having seen how well you've done in the first-hand councils.
Do you want the Tories to stand aside a candidate to give you a free run to make sure that Andy Burnham doesn't win?
It's irrelevant. They're irrelevant in Wigan, in Makerfield. Frankly, the Tories are toxic. Whatever they do will be a complete waste of time. They'll be lucky to get anywhere near saving their deposit.
OK, let's talk about what could happen in the event of a reform election. Reports in the Sunday papers that the Civil Service Union is looking at basically all-out strike action if reform did come to power to basically prevent reform from doing anything. Of course, hilariously, it's because they want to maintain their studious neutrality. I mean, they're not talking about all-out strike action if, say, the Greens got in or anything, but you are leading in the polls still. There's no doubt at all. You've got a party leader who said that, he's going to insist on strict civil service neutrality and make a lot of changes. Civil service are basically saying, and certainly the Whitehall, we're going to make it very difficult for you to do that. You could very well end up win the election, being in power, but actually not able to get anything done, couldn't you?
Well, some people might say that they're not sure if they notice much difference if a whole bunch of civil servants were on strike, given that too many of them are working from home. Productivity has gone nowhere in the last 15 to 20 years. But I'm of an optimistic mindset, Julia. I would hope that large numbers of them would respect the will of the British people and say they've stood on a manifesto, they've been elected on a manifesto. They do have an employment contract which requires them to carry out the will of the people via the elected representatives. And if they breach that contract, well, then they're in breach of an employment contract. But let's be optimistic and hope that they see light. Here's the other thing, Julia, lots and lots of union members are voting reform, particularly those in the private sector around oil and gas and energy and things. So we are we're going to push on, and if people try and put hurdles in a way, frankly, we'll find ways to get around them.
You're saying that could be mass sackings?
Look, we will find ways to jump over hurdles to get round them. Maybe if people don't want to work in the civil service under us, we could give them a lovely reference so they can get a splendid job with some charity or something somewhere. That would be a win-win for everybody.
Right. Let's talk about that £5 million gift from the British crypto billionaire Christopher Hobban that was given to your party leader Nigel Farage in the early months of early weeks of 2024. Now, this, of course, was before he had decided to run again for Parliament, before he got into Parliament. And you and I have discussed before whether or not he should have declared that money. He says it was a personal gift for his security, nothing to do with anything, no strings attached. Therefore, didn't have to declare it. I disagree with you on this. It would appear the Common Sleeves Watchdog also says there is a question mark of this, that they're launching or have launched an investigation into him over that gift and whether or not he should have declared that. What evidence is the Nigel Farage going to produce to this watchdog that he did not have to declare it?
Well, look, the investigation, the Standards Commissioner have launched an investigation. They do that with many complaints and issues raised by others. So there's no surprise about that. Nigel and his team will obviously put forward the evidence in the usual way, and they will take however long they take to make a judgment. But at the end of the day, our position is that the rules have been complied with, and there is a great deal of confidence around that. Ultimately, the Standards Commissioner will look at it and make their own ruling. But
why not just declare it anyway? As we've discussed earlier, a lot of these requirements are if there could be any perception of any influence. And I've got to be honest with you, I like Nigel Farage. I know he has security issues, which I think should be paid for by the state. I think it's outrageous he should need this any extra money for security if that is what this money is for. However, it does seem to me that, most of us don't get given, whoever we are, 5 million quid by a friendly crypto billionaire who lives in Thailand. And when you get given 5 million quid from this bloke and you don't declare it, and then it comes out, a few years later, and you're rather angry about it coming out, claiming that, there's nothing dodgy about it when you are campaigning on, making life easier for crypto billionaires if you were elected. I think it's not unreasonable to think that people might think there's something of a smell about this. Would it not have been easier if there was nothing to hide for him to have declared this money?
Well, we would have been, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you had declared it, if you declared at the time, there would have been all sorts of uproar. Look, at the end of the day...
You think it wasn't going to come out? So it was better if no one knew about it. Look, 5 million quid given to a party leader, and we'd never know about it.
You make judgments in life. We can agree to disagree.
So it was the wrong judgment?
No, I'm not saying that. Whatever Nigel
isn't it? Because
he's
being investigated
whatever Nigel
now.
Judged to do, he would have been attacked by all the usual people that attack him. And at the end of the day, we've got a clear view. The Standards Commissioner will look at it. And if the Standards Commissioner ends up agreeing with Nigel, I hope that a lot of people will apologise.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I just think he should have also got ahead of this. Yeah. But there's been lots of stories about your business finances and whether the right tax was paid by you or your business, all very complicated. There's been investigations of that. You know that the public don't take kind to this, especially when people have got a lot more money than the average earner in this country. Angela Rayner not paying her full stamp duty. She ended up losing job. Now, she's apparently been, found not to have been careless by HMRC. I find that to be absolutely ridiculous.
Let me tell you.
No, but you know that the British public do not take kindly to politicians who try and pull the wool over their eyes, who don't pay their correct tax or don't declare funding. They don't like it. So why walk into that trap if nothing was wrong?
All I will tell you is that when we knock on doors in the last few weeks and months, and indeed over this weekend, no one is raising this. Do you know what people want? They actually want successful business people who've got a track record of making things happen, employing things and building things, right? And we all pay our taxes. they actually want us to get stuck into politics to sort out the mess that the policy wonks, the spads and the things have completely screwed up the country over the last 20 years.
They do, but they also don't like it when politicians are seen to be on the take.
And
you proclaim that your party proclaims that you're different. You're not like that lot, in Westminster.
We're not, and that's why. Guess what, Julia? They're literally voting with their feet. They're voting for reform at the last elections. The polls, I think, will show when they close on this by-election the same again.
Has this damaged your party, though?
No, we're just last week, Julia, on YouGov, we got our largest ever poll lead at 11%. People want successful business people to come and save the country.
I know you've not got much time. I'm going to ask you about this though, because a TikTok put out by your colleague, the Home Affairs spokesman Zia Yusuf, I have to say, excellent bit of political campaigning about mass immigration and the problem in this country. It was taken down by TikTok, basically censoring it on the basis that they argued that it was illegal. Now, the reason they were able to do this, they specifically cited it was using the Online Safety Act. Now, Online Safety Act is something that people like me and many others who are worried about freedom of speech in this country had opposed, even though we're told it's about our safety. It rarely is. Have you had a word with Nadine Dorries, who was the Conservative Culture Secretary who brought in the Online Safety Act, brought in the bill, about the fact that a bill that she was in charge of in the government that she was a very senior figure in under Boris Johnson has actually curtailed freedom of speech in this country? Have you had a word with her now she's joined your party?
Look, I think the intention of legislation often like that was well intentioned. They took ages to do it, and sometimes sinners have to recognise when something hasn't worked out.
Has she
recognised? We're all sinners in a variety of ways, Julia.
Has she recognised it?
I don't know.
Because a lot of people queried why you'd want Nadine Dorries as a big figure. She basically opened your party conference last year. Why Nadine Dorries when actually she was the architect of a lot of things that people voted against when they turned to reform?
A Christian country welcomes sinners who recognise what they've got right and what they've got wrong. That's the nature of who we are, isn't it, Julia? But people with courage and conviction like Nadine are fantastic. But the door is shut, Julia. We're past May the 7th.
Has she repented her sins?
Oh, I think we all repent, and I'm sure Nadine was within that gang.
I'm not going to get anywhere with this, am I? I'm going to have to leave Richard Tice, Deputy Reform UK. Thank you very much for joining us. Benedict Spence, listening to all of that. Just interestingly, on the online, I'm going to talk about the other issues as well, the Online Safety Act. Again, we're always told about these things. It's even when you talk about like the ban on social media for teenagers and children and blah, blah, blah. It's always about safety. It's always about safety. It's nearly always involves the parents of a child who's horribly lost their life. Yeah. And we're always told it's about safety. But there's always a long-term impact. And we know that the default in this is if we're not sure whether it's legal or illegal, we're going to ban it. This is a censorship of... And I don't care if it was the Green Party or Reform or Tories or Labour or anyone else. This is censoring legitimate political debate online. By the way, by a Chinese-owned company. This is terrifying.
It is censorship, but this was always, I think, going to be the direction of travel, ultimately. Our state is incredibly authoritarian, and actually it's mirrored.
As are British people.
A lot of people actually are, and this goes back to a conversation we were having earlier about the nature of free speech. We don't have free speech in this country, and actually a surprising number of people really, really don't want free speech. They're happy when it's their own views, of course, that they want to espouse, but the default response is to go, and that thing I don't like, ban it. Outright,
and then everyone goes, oh, what a surprise.
Exactly.
When it's, a caller earlier who was saying about the cost of the policing these marches at the weekend. You have to pay for your own marches and your own policing. Well, that's all very well, except, of course, you're basically only allowing people who've got funding, who've got a rich benefactor to police those things. Although, I'm rather in favour of us not all being disturbed going through. Can these marches be places where they're not actually disturbing everyone going about their daily life? What do you make in terms of... the Nigel Farage £5 million gift, because that ain't going away. Dan Needle, who's done a lot of tax investigations, has been, and again, doesn't care which party it is. I know he's actually, I think he's a Labour supporter, but he's been very equal opportunities on this. And he said at some point this week they're going to publish their tax investigation, whether or not he should have declared money on that. Now, inheritance tax, weirdly, even if it's a gift from a friend, not a family member, if this Christopher Harbon dies in the next 7 years, there will be some tax to pay on it. But it also is whether or not you'd have to pay otherwise you'd have to declare it. But you would have to pay tax on on any interest earned. But it does seem surprising to a lot of us that someone could get a £5 million gift from somebody. I mean, couldn't I just ask my employer to, can you not pay me for my job? Could you just give me a gift and then I won't have to pay tax on it?
Yeah.
That seems to me that doesn't really make much sense to me.
It's not going away, but it has cropped up at the exact moment that the government has decided it's going to sort of throw everything up in the air and go, well, let's try something different.
I wonder if people are sitting on this.
Yeah, a lot of people I don't think are paying as much attention to it as they might otherwise do, and so from that perspective, you have to say Nigel Farage is very fortunate. Of course, it could all come out that nothing untoward has happened, in which case, fine. But I do also think a lot of people who support Nigel Farage will support him regardless of whatever has actually happened, because what he is promising these voters, broadly, is a grander vision of the future that involves more people, frankly, being able to have more of their own wealth, being able to, make themselves wealthier.
So people will let it go.
Yeah, what he's promising is the opposite of a state that comes out and punishes you for having money.
Is it also an element where, with all politicians, that whenever they go holier than thou, they are always going to be held to a higher standard than people who don't pretend they are.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think Nigel Farage has ever tried to portray himself as a saint. He's tried to portray himself as a more ordinary, down-to-earth person. And that, therefore, is easier, I think, for these things to sort of bounce off you. Another good example would have been, once upon a time, Silvio Berlusconi. All the things that just bounced straight off him because he didn't pretend to be something that he wasn't.
Bounced off the bunga parties. He owned the entire Italian media.
Yes, and why did it work? Why did it work? Because people bought into the vision that he sold. It helps that he owns the media outlet, but they watched it because he gave them something they wanted.
I'm not going to get sidelined into ancient Italian politics.
Ancient?
Well, he's dead now. I hate to break this to you. 12:39 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to get to your calls on that by-election in Makerfield and whether or not Brexit's going to be the big issue. And do you think Wes Streeting deliberately stitched up Andy Burnham? And also going to be talking about those marches. Which one was the hate march? This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, good afternoon. God, do you know what? I think I've got that wrong virtually every time. I'll just say hello. Why? I don't know what's going on. So that Monday feeling, I don't know. It's night time for my guest coming up in a few moments. She's live for us in Australia. Sal Grover, founder of Giggle for Girls, Tickle v Giggle, extraordinary court ruling in Australia. We'll talk about that in a couple of moments. Let's get to your calls right now, though. Tristan is on the line. He's given us a call on 0344 499 1000. He's in Bedford. Tristan, you want to talk about this Makerfield by-election in Manchester, where Andy Burnham is hoping to be the Labour candidate, win and get back into Parliament and basically become the next Prime Minister.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to say just regards to regards to reform. I mean, that £5 million, sorry to sidetrack a bit, but the 750,000 that was donated to Labour Together for Keir Starmer, that was done apparently in an administration error.
Yeah,
and that sort of gone
it wasn't
really,
declared,
really,
and that of course links to Josh Simons, who's the MP who's standing down from Makerfield.
Yeah, and the thing is that no matter what happens in Makerfield, I mean, if Labour win and Burnham then is fast-tracked to become a PM, as Benedict said earlier, nothing's going to change. They're so ideological driven in the two main issues, which is mass migration and net zero. So how anything is going to change. And the thing is, when you do speak to these Labour representatives. Why are they so wedded to these two insane policies?
And also wedded to, well, certainly the backbenchers are, to not cutting welfare. I mean, all three things are completely unsustainable.
Yeah, and they're so ideological. I mean, I suffer from Crohn's disease. I didn't attend the march on Saturday because I'm on a flare of my Crohn's. I don't get any help from for disability or PIP or anything.
Well, why don't you say you've got ADHD? We'll give you a car.
Because there's this thing. I'm honest.
Well, this will never catch on, Tristan. I'm waiting for the point where we all just claim to be on the autism spectrum, which technically we all are, aren't we? Well, everyone. We're just mostly at the I suppose the functional end. In which case, we could all get a free car. We all get benefits, and then no one will have to work. It'll be brilliant. It'll be a socialist dream.
But the thing is that when I've tried to get it with regards to my Crohn's, say, oh, you deal with it really, really well, so you're not entitled to it. Even though I actually do have, and there's other people that get Crohn's who probably do get it, but because of I deal with my illness well, I get nothing.
Shame on you is all I can say, Tristan. No, I mean, that must be infuriating. I completely understand. Thank you very much for that call, Tristan. Let's go to Hassan, who is in Cambridge. And Hassan, you want to talk about these marches at the weekend, don't you? I mean, do you know which one was the hate march?
Yes, absolutely. The hate march was the United Kingdom march, where people were rowdy, offensive, and then they had this three women on stage mocking Muslim women for their clothes.
Mocking the niqab, which should be mocked. It's a horrific garment.
No. Look, if the Palestine protesters had somebody dressed up in Orthodox Jewish clothes and people making fun of them and shouting at them and asking them to take that off, you would not be excusing that behavior. You would
again,
be calling
if it was,
as it is.
I've got to be honest with you, if it was, say, like, let's say it was, it was a nun in her outfit, or if it was, say, someone in Hasidic Jewish, in clothing, hats or whatever, kippah. If it was a Muslim woman with just a hijab, just a headscarf on, I would say that's unacceptable. I think the niqab and the burqa, these women were wearing niqabs because you could see their eyes. I think that is such an offensive and degrading outfit that has, by the way, nothing to do with Islam. It's a cultural imposition.
Julia,
Hassan, fewer than 10% of Muslim women in this world wear those outfits, and the vast majority of them do so because they are required to do so by regimes like the Taliban. Now, I'm sorry, that is not mocking Islam. It's not mocking Muslim women. It is mocking a disgusting, horrible, degrading, dehumanising item of control. They've got every right to mock it.
No, they don't. If a Muslim woman in the UK, which is not an Islamist regime, wants to wear a particular dress, you have no right to tell her what to do. Do you agree?
No, legally right now, no, and I absolutely would not. However, I would like to, Hassan, I would like the law to be changed to follow the law of France and many other European countries where it is illegal to wear those items wear any face covering in public. I would like to follow that, yes. But at the current time, no. But people weren't shouting to a Muslim woman to take those items off. They were shouting to women on stage, mocking a horrific, degrading item of clothing, not representative of Muslim women at all, apart from Islamist extremist regimes. And I think that's totally legitimate.
No, Julia, you're not an expert on what Muslim women should wear or not wear.
I can read. No, Hassan, are you?
Yes.
You are. You're an expert, are you?
I'm not the one telling them to take
Hassan,
it off.
What percentage of Muslim women wear the burqa or the niqab then?
Yeah, it's less than 1%. So
it's not that. No, it's more than that.
Why are you hassling them?
So you're not an expert. No, but they weren't shouting at Muslim women. They were shouting at the outfits.
You know what? This level of understanding that you are communicating to these racists who were chanting, I wish you could share even 1/10 of that to the pro-Palestine marchers, where you have a completely different level of standard, where you are So there is two-tier racism.
I love that you think it's that way around. There were undoubtedly Hassan. There were undoubtedly some racists on that Unite the Kingdom march, and there were some people who were arrested, and I've got absolutely no problem with being arrested if they've broken the law. Those pro-Palestinian marches aren't pro-Palestinian at all. They are anti-Jewish. You know that, I know that. The chants, the placards show us that. And the two-tier policing is very much going on the other way. We're going to have to agree to disagree on those women. I don't like that. I hold no count for anything those women were saying on stage. And in terms of their right to mock that item of dress, I 100% stand by that right. And if people don't like that in this country, then they're living in the wrong country, because we mock religion in this country and we mock clothing that degrades women. We absolutely do. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to talk about people who degrade women, and that will include the Australian Full Federal Court, which a couple of days ago has ruled extraordinarily that men are women. Yep, legally, it's as simple as that. There's no such thing as biological sex legally in the Australian laws. We'll talk about that with the founder of the Giggle for Girls app in the extraordinary case of Tickle v Giggle, Sal Grover. That's up next. This is Talk.
Brand new for 2026. It's going to be the only way to start your day. It's the home of common sense. It's where the nation can come to speak about the day's news. It's the Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show. You know who you are. You get up, you graft, you work hard. I'm here for you. We want to hear your side. Promise you one thing. It is where the nation can and will come to talk. The Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show, weekdays from 6 a.m.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense, for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Well, let's talk to someone who's absolutely got common sense. Unlike the Australian Full Federal Court, she is Sal Grover, founder of the Giggle for Girls app. A very, very good afternoon to you, Sal.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, for a late evening for you in Australia. So appreciate you joining us. Now, for lots of people who've not been keeping abreast of this, can you just give us just a very brief account of what this court judgment was that we're talking about, why it's so significant?
So basically, the quickest way I can explain it, I created an app exclusively for women. I didn't know that there was an issue of what a woman is for the first time in human history. It came under attack from trans activists instantly. One took me to court. A man who claims to be a woman filed an Australian Human Rights Commission complaint against me. I didn't settle it in court in that stage because I was basically just being told I had no rights and I had to just let them on. I decided to fight it. Went to federal court. The first federal court ruled that sex is changeable and that men can be women. Obviously, that's absurd. So I appealed, and so this has been a 4.5-year process at this point. And on Friday, the full federal court went even further, actually, in saying that sex is changeable. It actually, if you can believe it, said that looking like a man is a protected characteristic of being a trans woman. And so I directly discriminated against this individual because I acknowledged that
he is a man. Because he calls himself Roxanne Tickle, and that's where we get this absurd name of this case, Tickle versus Giggle. This is Roxanne Tickle, who is quite clearly a man, and we've showed a picture of him. I mean, he's quite clearly a man, and you identified him as a man when you were looking through the people who were. I mean, you've been in the studio talking about this in more detail previously when you were over in London, but you basically set up this site. It was supposed for women to sort of have free chats, but it's for women only. No place for men. And a load of trans activists went, well, we're not having that. And then you were looking to go, okay, this is a man, no, this is a man, no, and not allowing them. And he decided to sue because, God forbid, he needs to be in every single space that women have. But did you not assume that the courts would be sane enough and go, yeah, well, clearly this is wrong? Or were you... I mean, you're say 4.5 years down the route of this case, but when you went to the full federal court, I think you have got another layer to go, another level of court to go to after this, thank goodness. But did you just expect that you would get the sort of ruling that we thankfully got last year? Still insane, but we got in April last year in the UK, where the Supreme Court ruled that, women-only spaces are because women are biologically different to men. Sex is decided by biological sex, and therefore someone calling themselves a woman, even if they've got a gender recognition certificate, even if they've had every operation under the sun, which most of these men have not done, if they're still not women and they're still not allowed in women-only spaces. It was so clear-cut. We're still fighting that battle now, but did you think that the court would be as clear-cut with you?
Look, for round one, I wasn't shocked in the sense that I was like, you can corrupt or fool one person. I thought that maybe this case was just too big for one judge. I did have hope that you couldn't fool 3 judges. And maybe I am just an eternal optimist, and I think it's always important to be, but I know how poisonous this ideology is. I mean, I've been involved in fighting it now for 6.5 years. But the For Women Scotland decision was submitted in our case. Our judges were aware of it. And Australia very much could have led the way with this. The first Tickle v Giggle decision was before For Women Scotland. It was before Trump came in and started fixing things in the US. But instead of leading the way, Australia has just decided to double down and try and be some nuclear testing ground for the stupidest ideology in modern history, like it's going to work in Australia where it's failed everywhere else. We will inevitably win. It's inevitable. The truth always wins. Sometimes you've got to give it a nudge, but it always wins.
Well, to a certain extent, these sort of cases kind of help because people become aware of it and go, well, this is mad, because clearly men aren't women. I mean, and everyone knows that. Even the idiots. We've got a new health secretary who thinks that, I've had an interview with him before, James Murray, who thinks that men are women. I mean, when people say trans women are women, what they mean is men are women or can become women. You know that's not true. I know that's not. Everyone listening and watching knows that's not true. Sometimes you need to sort of, put it up in neon lights for everyone to go, no, the emperor does not have any clothes on. I would have hoped for better. Well, before lockdown, I would have hoped for better from the Australians, I have to say. But sadly not anymore. The thing is, this isn't about an app. This isn't about a women-only app for making jokes and having a laugh with other women. This is about a ruling that basically says men can just say, I'm a woman at any time and enter any women-only space, and it is legal and protected by the courts, and that includes changing rooms, toilets, women's refuges, hospital wards, women's prisons. A man can get convicted of a sexual offence, and the implications of this on women's safety and rights are huge. Women basically don't exist in Australia.
Yeah, we are not in federal discrimination law at all, or state for that matter. No, I mean, we do not have the right to say no to a man in any of our spaces, in our sport. If you so much, as I said, notice that he even looks like a man, well, that's direct discrimination.
And you were fined extra. You actually had to pay a bigger fine in the court because of that, because you said he is a man.
Yes, they have said that with no evidence, actually, no evidence of my interviews or anything was submitted, but the other side claimed that I had that I've called him a man in 50 interviews, which is completely incorrect. It's many more than that. I've never once called him.
He's a man. Let's have a few more. He's a man.
I will continue to do it because it is the truth. I don't say it as an insult or a character assassination or anything. It is a basic statement of fact, and there's not a single person in the world who should be afraid to say it.
No, and the court should not rule against. What's next, though? What happens next? Because bearing in mind, you're not, like actually, look, Sandy Peggy and other campaigners, I mean, Maya Forstater, loads of us I know you will have met and heard about in the UK. Most of the women who are ending up bringing these sort of cases, they're not out for a cause. They weren't like looking for a fight. They literally were just going about their daily business and then get dragged into it and then went, all right, fine, I'll play. You know, what's next for you? Where's the next stage of the court battle?
So the next stage we have is the High Court. And the High Court is an error in law court. So we would be going to the High Court and saying a big error in law has occurred. Right. So we have 28 days to file in that. And then, so that's another process. And just to put it into perspective for anyone listening, when I got the Australian Human Rights Commission complaint, I was 14 weeks pregnant. My daughter will be 4 years old in July.
But you know what? You're doing this for her. You are doing this for her. Sal Graver, I think you're absolutely wonderful. I know my audience will too. It was so lovely to have met you when you came in the other year. She's founder of the Giggle for Girls app. She's fighting the good fight for sanity. There is a crowdfunder for her. Do help you. We'll put out a link to that when we do this video. Sal Graver, thank you so much for joining us. Benedict Spence still with us, who is a man but knows he's a man, so that's a good thing. This is properly mad.
It is mad. I'm firmly in favour now of creating safe legal routes for Australian women to flee this insanity and come and claim asylum in Britain.
Absolutely.
Honestly, I mean, I can't imagine what it must be to be in Australia watching other countries actually come to sane decisions on this.